You're live now, Councillor. Good evening and welcome councillors, executive leadership team, community members and council staff to tonight's ordinary council meeting. My name is Councillor Tim Dryley and I'm Mayor of the Hepburn Shire Council. Hepburn Shire Council acknowledges the Djadja Wurrung as the traditional owners of the lands and waters on which we live and work. On these lands, Djara have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We recognise their resilience through dispossession and it is a testament to their continuing culture and tradition, which is strong and thriving. We also acknowledge the neighbouring traditional owners, the Wurundjeri to our southeast and the Wadawurrung to our southwest, and pay our respect to all Aboriginal peoples, their culture and law. We acknowledge their living culture and the unique role they play in the life of this region. I now invite councillors to stand and read the councillor statement of commitment. We, the councillors of Hepburn Shire, declare that we will undertake on every occasion to carry out our duties in the best interests of the community and that our conduct shall maintain the standards of the Code of Good Governance. We may faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in this council by the people of the Hepburn Shire. Tonight's council meeting will be conducted in person and virtually. You'll see that Councillor Simpson is joining us via Zoom this evening. In line with current state government requirements, all those present in person were required to provide evidence of COVID-19 vaccination or a valid medical exemption. In the spirit of open, transparent and accountable governance, the meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page and you'll be able to view the proceedings of the meeting, councillor deliberations and voting. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on Council's website as soon as practicable after the meeting. In accordance with Chapter 6, Section 3 of our governance rules, a person, including any representative of the media, must not operate photographic, audio or video recording equipment or any other recording device at any council meeting without first obtaining the consent of the chairperson. I also remind everyone that local government decision-making, unlike state and federal government, does not afford the benefit of parliamentary privilege and hence no protection is afforded to councillors and council officers for comments made during meetings which are subsequently challenged in a court of law and determined to be slanderous. I'd like to now introduce councillor officers who are present in this council meeting. We have Mr. Bradley Thomas, who's online tonight. He's our Chief Executive Officer. We have Mr. Andrew Burgess next to me here as Director, Organisational Services. Ms. Lee McCallum, Director of Community and Development. Mr. Bruce Lucas, Director of Infrastructure and Delivery. Mr. Chris White, Manager of ICT. Ms. Rebecca Smith, Acting Governance and Risk. Pauline and Vigie. Sorry, Pauline and Vigie. Manager, right? All right, slight oversight. We also have Vigie Sakanawa, who's Manager of Planning Development, and Pauline Maltzis, who's Coordinator of Planning. Mr. Thomas, do we have any apologies for tonight's meeting?
Through you, Chair. No, we don't. We have no apologies for tonight.
Thank you.
We have Councillor Halliday on
maternity leave. Yep. Thank you. Moving now to declarations of conflict of interest, and as required at any other meeting of council, councillors must declare a conflict of interest at the start of the meeting and leave the meeting when the item is presented to council. Councillors will be required to leave the meeting and return when the item has been resolved. Throughout the meeting, if a councillor realises that they have an interest, they can declare at that point and follow the same procedure. Councillors, does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare? And I need to declare a conflict of interest, and that is for item 11.1, 47 Albert Street, Creswick. Officers present, I now ask you whether you have a conflict of interest in any items presented before council tonight.
I have no interest.
No conflict of interest?
I do have interest.
Good to hear. Moving on to item 6, which is confirmation of previous meeting minutes. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us to adopt meeting minutes from council's previous council meetings. The recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 15th of March 2022 and the minutes of the special meeting of council held on the 22nd of March 22 as previously circulated councillors be confirmed. I am in search of a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Henderson, seconder. Councillor Hewitt, would anyone like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As usual, I'll speak against the motion. Councillors, all of our meetings include very important topics on the agenda, and the 15th of March and the 22nd of March were no exception. On the 15th of March, we discussed and debated and made decisions on the aged care, provision of aged care services. That meeting also addressed the half-year financial report, and the meeting on the 22nd addressed the item 13.1 on tonight's agenda, the renaming of a creek. Those three examples were all terribly important items. The minutes as they are drafted give the reader absolutely no insight whatsoever as to what we discussed, what we debated, what factors we took into account in order to reach those respective decisions. The minutes therefore lack all sorts of transparency. They're not informative, and in my view, they are unprofessional and should not be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Would anyone else like to speak for or against? No. I put the motion to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against? And motion is carried.
Abstained, yeah.
Sorry?
I abstain.
Oh, you abstained, sorry. Jim. Motion is still carried. Moving on to item 7, notice of motion. There's no notice of motion that have to be submitted to tonight's meeting. Item 8, items of urgent business. Councillors, are there any items of urgent business tonight? No. Move on to item number 9, presentation of councillor reports. I'd like to present my report. With the announcement today that nearly all COVID-19 restrictions will be relaxed later this week in Victoria, it's a reminder to us all that that there is another life waiting for us post the pandemic. We've certainly seen the stirring of community activity in the Shire again in the past month, with the successful festivals such as Cresfest bringing people out onto the streets and overall visitation numbers to the Shire climbing again. It's been great to see so many community groups and volunteers and ordinary people being able to invest their time and energies again in the real world beyond the somewhat surreal but necessary limitations imposed by the raft of COVID mandates. At a council level, we've also been doing some significant work in the background for our communities. the cumulative results of which we're seeing presented for decision on tonight's agenda. In particular, I think it's important to note the possible adoption of the Hepburn Shire Council Aquatic Strategy, where we're seeing strong support for our community, from our community and stakeholders for an indoor year-round aquatics facility. Also, following a considerable community consultation period, which included a special meeting last month to hear presentations from survey respondents, Council is considering tonight the proposed renaming of Jim Crow Creek to Lani Barrel Yallock, which is in line with recommendations from representatives of local traditional owners, Judge Wurrung. And I note that Council is committed to reconciliation, to learn, acknowledge and move forward together with our traditional owners. I'd also like to make mention of the significant amount of effort that officers and councillors have gone to be presenting the proposed changes to our differential rate systems for possible implementation and to seek further community feedback. In particular, I note that proposed changes introduce such things as a differential rate to promote and support sustainable farming practices, to address and impact short-term accommodation on the impact of short-term accommodation on the availability of long-term rentals and the need for more affordable and social housing in the Shire. Although these issues are complex, I believe our community can take some comfort that Council is attempting to explore and address the concerns, priorities and values that are outlined in our Council plan. As we begin our discussions for next year's budget, it's important to reflect on the extraordinary year that it has been and to acknowledge the negative impact two major storm events and a pandemic have had on our financial bottom line. As a small rural council, as much as we are aware of the desire in the community to see a suite of major projects and services delivered, it's not always possible to fund projects directly and immediately. Also, given our very tight financial position currently, I wish to acknowledge council and staff efforts to review and prioritise our current workload liabilities, to continue manage our fiscal responsibilities and to forge a successful strategic path going forward. Item 9.2 is councillor reports, and Councillor Henderson from Creswick Ward.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'll be brief because we've got a big agenda tonight and we don't want to leave people sitting around. But I must report, as you would know, on a very successful Cresfest in Creswick. There was something for everybody. We did hear some people couldn't go to some things, but there were a lot of free events, and I must say that it probably was a community effort in the end. Over 100 volunteers involved and many community groups and participants. And I think one of the highlights that's come out of that is a Creswick Youth Choir, which is a very good thing to see young people having their place in these events. They're often left out. I do think that it's time to reflect on the elections and what they might bring. And these are only promises, but we had a visit from Catherine King, who has served for many years as the member for Ballarat, who made an announcement for $750,000 to Lindsay Park. Now, we do know that our bowling club there has suffered fairly substantial damage and that there are some works. I often describe Lindsay Park as the great unfinished project because you drive in there, it's a great facility, but it always looks unfinished, and to get some money would be very welcome. Of course, promises are only promises. At that announcement, she also announced $500,000 for Glen Lyon. And what can I say? Holcombe Ward seems to miss out because it doesn't have a major town, and a promise of that magnitude would make a big difference in that community. The works on our improved drainage and repairing the town after the terrible storms goes on. And there's many really great discoveries. One of them is, once again, we've had a gutter washout and we've discovered not a bluestone gutter, but a quartz gutter. It was built from the rounded quartz, much the way as the bluestone gutters were made, and I'm pleased to say the council has, where they can, restored that for the future. I know it's only a small thing, but people appreciate the small things when we're doing it. I must also report on what I think is a bit of good news. AusNet have put back the environmental effects statement deadline, and it's somewhat down to the resolute opposition that's been made by the residents between Dean and out round Clunes, all the way along that line. They've been very resolute, and one of the problems is that they haven't given access to AusNet to do their proper studies, so it has to be put back. So I think that's a small victory in a big fight, and I'm very pleased and proud to say that the council has supported those people in their struggle all the way. I won't bang on anymore. I think they're the important things that's happening. There is another important thing that's happening in Creswick, and that is that the trailhead is now progressing, as is the project down at Calumbean with our toilets. So we're getting a little bit of work done. There appears to be more work because we've got excavators and so on doing drainage. So it's like Creswick's abuzz with works. Sadly, I hate to say I would prefer that we didn't have to do those storm recovery works, but they're being very well done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I'd like to invite Councillor Brian Hood from Colibin Ward to present his report.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I'll report tonight, it's timely to report tonight on the operations of the Municipal Response Working Group, which I am a member of. As you'll be aware, in the 6 months to December, Council spent $4.8 million on recovery works, but received relief funding of $4.1 million, $700,000 impact in half a year. The impact on Council's financials is obvious. However, the ongoing burden on staff and the organisation is perhaps less obvious. I can report that advocacy continues for further state government funding, as there is so much more work to be done. Depending on the success of those fundings applications, new programs will include targeted recovery funding programs on mentoring, timber training and community recovery events. It also includes a habitat program to support wildlife back into storm-affected parts of our landscape, and that's in partnership with DELP. There's also a clean-up program, Shire-wide planned, and a community support fund. I can also report that there have been 2 new staff members who have joined the team in recent times, position yet to be filled. These roles will deliver the social recovery programs, support businesses with their recovery needs, and facilitate the programs anticipated to be provided by additional state government funding. The roadside cleanup of tree debris has been completed, as has the free firewood program. The timber processing site has been rehabilitated. However, another significant remaining piece of work is Council's road restoration program, which we are still awaiting funding for. In summary, much work has been done to date, but the community can be assured that much more will be done. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Hood. Councillor Juliet Simpson, Holcombe Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please see my report that I will table.
Thanks, Councillor Simpson. Inviting now Councillor Jen Bray from Birch Ward, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Dryly. My report, I'll keep brief as well, and I'll table my full report, but I'll just highlight a few key things from the last month. I was very privileged to be able to chair the inaugural, very first LGBTIQA+ advisory committee, which we have just established. This has been driven by Councillor Tessa Halliday, who is now on parental leave, so she's handed that over to me for a few months. So it was a great opportunity to meet the new committee members and to start making some priorities for how that advisory committee might help to shape Council's approach to that community and to look at actions we could implement down the track. Other highlights from my month were attending Cresfest, as many of us did. I actually got to do a couple of dance classes and take part in a lot of great activities. It's wonderful to see everybody being able to get outside and out to see some live music and dance. in the community. I wanted to congratulate two groups who had their 10-year anniversary celebrations in the last month. So I visited the Daylesford and District Community Bank and congratulate them on their ongoing contribution to providing local banking services and through their investment in community projects to help support our community. Also, the Hepburn Whole Foods, who were very excited about how their organisation has grown over the last 10 years. They celebrated their anniversary as well. And they've contributed a huge number of volunteer hours to providing local people the chance to buy healthy, chemical-free and unpackaged foods in our local area. And that contributes to our efforts to be a more sustainable shire. I was also very happy to be able to be involved in the graduation certificate ceremony for the Daylesford Glenlyon Hepburn Gardens for Wildlife, which council has initiated and it's been taken up by many members of the community. And this is a way for us to be promoting biodiversity by training up local gardeners in our shire to be able to mentor others in planting out native gardens, specifically to encourage animals and insects into our gardens and surrounds. So congratulations to all those who graduated.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Last but not least, Councillor Leslie Hewitt-Birchwood.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to start my report by acknowledging to you all that I became a victim of COVID and was forced to isolate and so missed some community events, but as a consequence of technology was able to participate in many of the council briefings. It's possibly, as Mayor mentioned, we've got a lessening of restrictions, and it's perhaps a good personal reminder that we need to continue to be careful, continue to get our vaccination updates, because let me tell you, it's not a pleasant experience. One of the things, as the Mayor alluded to, and it will be discussed later tonight, was the importance of the special council meeting around hearing both supporters and objectors of the renaming the Jim Crow Creek. And that's something that the community has been raising for many years, and that council, through its Reconciliation Action Committee, took on a couple of years ago, and it's positive to see that coming to council tonight, but also to have the opportunity to listen to both sides of the debate. I was able to attend via Zoom a Respect Victoria workshop, Violence Against Women with a Disability. As you'll know, I chair both the Gender Equity Committee and the Disability Advisory Committee, and that workshop and those plans will be coming up and strategies will be coming up this year. You will be aware that women with a disability have much higher rates of, experience much higher rates of family violence. And it was useful to hear the latest research about programs and policies that can act as a preventative. I'm also the chair of the Daylesford Hospital Upgrade Committee meeting and was pleased that Marianne Thomas, our local member, was able, when she was visiting, to look at the progress at Wombat Hill, to take the opportunity to visit the hospital and have a sneak preview of the master plan, which is hopefully going to be made public in a very short time, but also to meet with Martha Hallett, who is the ALP candidate for Ripon, and both of those people indicated their interest in the Daylesford Hospital upgrade. Taking on Councillor Henderson's point, it is an election year, and that's going to be very important in terms of funding. Just for interest, the Daylesford Hospital has been serving the community. It's 160 years on the 22nd of May. Like Councillor Bray, I had the opportunity to attend not only the party at the Daylesford and District Community Bank for their 10-year celebration, but also their dinner. They have now given back $602,000 to the community, which is more than the community contribution to fund it in the first place. And that does not include return of capital and share dividends to shareholders. So it's a very good example of how the community can work together and support development in our community. Like Councillor Bray, I attended the Hepburn Shire Gardens for Wildlife Mentors graduation, and it's this program that's been supported by the Shire and fits into biodiversity strategy coming out of Sustainable Hepburn. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Hewitt. I have a recommendation that council receives and notes the mayor's and councillors' reports. I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Hood, do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson, all those in favour? Carried. We're now moving on to item 9.3, which is the Chief Executive Officer's report. We have a recommendation that council, no, we won't do that just yet. We'll hear it first.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mayor,
Robert.
and hopefully you can all hear me. Apologies for not being there in person, but being in isolation doesn't allow it, but it's fantastic that we can continue these virtual ways. So my CEO's report is tabled and I'll keep it short and sharp, but just really wanted to acknowledge the fantastic work undertaken across the community, particularly councillors and staff, of all the great projects over the last month, and particularly for items being brought forward to tonight. Also great that a number of our staff have been able to experience some breaks over the Easter period and another long weekend as we celebrate the Anzac weekend or commemorate Anzac weekend in the coming weekend as well. Thank you, councillors, and there's an officer's recommendation that council receives and notes the CEO's report for April 2022.
Thanks, Mr. Thomas, and I'm in search of a mover for that motion. Councillor Hood again, and a seconder, Councillor Hewitt, and all those in favour? Carried. We're now moving on to item 10.1, which is public participation time, and we have a number of questions that I will answer. Following question was carried over from the previous council meeting, just to note that. And the question was from Gillian Treblecock. Is council intending to support a hospitality training initiative for the benefit of local young people? And my response is council is currently developing the 21-25 youth strategy, which will identify specific initiatives. Council currently supports the Cook, the Chef and Us, which is a hospitality training initiative that also focuses on mental wellbeing for young people. The current council plan does identify the following priority statement, which will link to the youth strategy and could support such an initiative. And it's item 4.1, which is work in partnership to attract and retain young people in our area through the provision of improved digital connectivity, education opportunities, employment pathways, affordable housing, improved public and active transport options, and leadership opportunities. So the next questions relate to questions received for this meeting, and question 1 is from Adam Fawcett. It has been 4 months since council voted to discontinue the REX project. Can council please update the community on a timeline for the community consultation strategy that they have promised? We would like a concrete date that this can be expected, please. And my response is council is in the process of finalising the content for the community engagement process, and we are anticipating releasing this information on Tuesday, the 26th, April 2022. And a further report is now anticipated to be presented to June or July ordinary council meeting to consider the feedback and determine to proceed with the sale or not. Question 2 comes from Jules McDonald. The Rethink the REX public meeting held on 5th of April 22, attended by 120 community members, unanimously passed a motion to request council to rescind the decision to sell the REX. The decision was made suddenly without community consultation, against the recommendation of the council's executive staff and very early in the term of the newly appointed team of councillors. Rescinding the decision would enable alternatives to be fully and properly explored, and it would also enable a comprehensive community consultation process to be undertaken prior to such a decision being taken, which is the appropriate process. Will council rescind the decision to sell the REX building so that alternatives can be explored and the community can comprehensively be consulted. My response is, under Council's governance rules, a decision of Council may only be rescinded if a notice of rescission is received within 24 hours of the decision and the decision has not been acted on. In this case, the decision of Council the 23rd of November 21 has resulted in considerable action being taken to implement the decision, including advice to contractors, media releases and inquiries, communications to stakeholders, and commence the planning for the sale of the building, engagement of contractor to facilitate the community engagement as part of the sale process. Accordingly, Council is no longer able to consider a rescission motion as the motion is more than 24 hours old and has been acted upon. It is important to note that a further report will be presented to Council on the community feedback received as part of Council making a final determination to proceed with the sale or otherwise. Question 3 is from Jules McDonald as well. The Rethink the Rex community group is exploring a range of options in relation to the Rex building. Alternatives will include community use of part of the building, with the cinema being a prime consideration together with financial viability. Is Council open to considering alternatives developed by the Rethink the Rex community group and the community? My response is, Council has determined not to proceed with the Hepburn Hub at the Rex project, and this project has now been cancelled. Council has instructed officers to commence the sale process, which is underway. As part of this process, Council will shortly be undertaking a community engagement process and invite submissions, feedback from the community on the proposed sale of the building. The feedback will be presented to Council for consideration in a further report as part of the determining to proceed with the sale or not. Question 4 comes from Christina Seville. According to Hepburn Shire Council website, the Council is working to encourage the growth of culture in our region with arts events, art commissions and projects, creative spaces for artists and public art. A town without an artist centre is like a person without a soul. And that quote is from Petra Spronk. Stop and think, we're better than the Rex to inspire, connect and showcase the diversity of our creative community. What is the Council doing to provide an affordable, available creative spaces for artists and a space to showcase artists' work in Daylesford? My response is, Council has determined to not proceed with the Hepburn Hub at the Rex project, and this project has now been cancelled. Outside of this process, the Council plan includes the development and implementation of an arts and culture strategy to support local artists to provide creative cultural experiences to enrich community wellbeing. Question 5 is also from Christina Seville. According to the Hepburn Shire Council website, the Council plays an active role in community development. We do this by helping communities build social capital and assisting them to become more sustainable by building the skills and capacity of individuals and groups within the community, building community networks, social planning and business and community partnerships. We're helping make our communities stronger. And that's our quote from the website. The Hub at the Rex was going to be a place where Daylesford and other locals could meet and gather together and build social capital through an expanded library, a community theatre, including a cinema and a social enterprise cafe that could include youth as well as produce of local growers and makers. There was also potential to showcase the work of local artists. Perhaps the Rex could be a space for growers and makers of local produce and local artists to hold workshops for locals and visitors. Bringing people living and working around Daylesford, Hepburn and Hepburn Springs and Glen Lyon and beyond together would help achieve the Council's aim of building a social capital and making the Daylesford community stronger. An active, strong community would also enhance Daylesford's reputation as a go-to destination to live, work and visit. Is there another site that Council has available in Daylesford that could achieve all the above, that is central, visible and accessible? Response is, no alternative site has been identified. However, Part 6 of Council's determination at the 23rd of November 21 meeting does include a requirement for all officers to prepare a project scope for a new planning project to review possible solutions for community facilities and staff accommodation. It is envisaged that this project will consider alternative project options apart from the rec site as per council resolution. Question 6 is from Tim Bark. We welcome the release of the aquatic strategy and we applaud the key recommendation to undertake a feasibility assessment of an indoor aquatic centre in the Hepburn Shire. The tabled document includes an alteration to the original vision statement so that it now states, provide access to sustainable, affordable, year-round aquatics facilities that brings Hepburn residents together to enjoy health, wellbeing, education and leisure experiences. The inclusion of access to could be interpreted to broaden the scope of the vision statement to include access via transport of residents to aquatic facilities outside the Shire. This does not reflect the community feedback included in the document, nor was it canvassed as an alternative to the existing pools or a new indoor facility. Can Council please confirm that the intent of the vision statement is to provide year-round aquatic facilities within the Shire? Can the Council also confirm that the intent of the feasibility study will be to assess the viability and location of an all-year indoor aquatic centre to be located in Hepburn Shire? My response is, Council can confirm that the intent of the vision statement is to provide year-round aquatic facilities within the Shire. It is Council's intention to undertake a study into the feasibility of developing an indoor aquatic facility within the Hepburn Shire. The detailed planning work, including a business case and funding strategy, is required to fully understand Council's ability to fund, develop and operate an indoor aquatics facility. Question 7, and this is from Jennifer Beecham. At February Council meeting, I asked a question and was informed that a Council officer would ring me with the answer. That has not happened, so I'm interested to know when I can expect a response. When I asked the question, I expected the information to be readily available to all rate payers. My response is I apologise that contact has not been made to date. We will follow this up to ensure contact is made in the next couple of days. Question 8 is from Jim Foster. The Hepburn Shire Council Aquatic Strategy states, on average, indoor aquatics facilities receive 5 times more visits annually than an outdoor swimming pool. This reflects their ability to support recreational needs of people all year round. The Daylesford, the outdoor pool, was open for approximately 62 days and attracted approximately 12,750 visitations, or approximately 200 visits for each day that it was open. If a 5-fold increase is predicted for a proposed indoor facility, this would extrapolate to approximately 1,000 visits a day or 350,000 per annum. In their draft business plan, DIAC has estimated annual visitations of about 180,000, which seems conservative by comparison. Can the consultants or council confirm their estimate for annual utilisation/visitation for an all-year indoor facility in Daylesford? My response is an indoor aquatic centre will attract a significantly larger number of people. The proposed feasibility study will confirm the facility components and the likely number of people who will use each of the components. Benchmarking of indoor aquatics facilities with similar catchments to the whole of Hepburn Shire indicates visitations of between 100,000 to 200,000 visits per annum, depending on the components. Question 9 is from Jim Foster. The Hepburn Shire Council Aquatic Strategy details expenditure in 2021 on the existing aquatics facilities as $393,291. What was the budget for these facilities for 21-22 and what is the current updated estimate? Is there a budget for 22-23? And my response, and this is the last question, the 21-22 operational budget for aquatics facilities was $470,452, and Council has spent approximately 70% of this budget to date. The 21-22 capital works budget also included $55,000 for pool building renewal works, and Council has spent approximately 50% of this budget to date. An amount of $377,000 was endorsed by Council as part of the 21-22 mid-year budget review to commence the necessary compliance and OH&S works to existing aquatics facilities. The report before council this evening seeks an additional 103,000 to continue these works and 160,000 to undertake further detailed investigation and develop a feasibility study / business case for indoor aquatics provision. Council is currently in the process of developing its budget for the 22-23 financial year. We're moving now to item 10.2, and that's request to address council. We've got one request to address council tonight, and it's I now invite Ms. Julian McDonald to speak in relation to the Hepburn Hub at the Rex. Request to address for planning matters will be heard as council considers each item.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. History of council involvement with the Rex is a very messy one and demonstrates poor process, confusion and lack of transparency, past and present. I understand that council tried to consult the community before taking a decision to sell such a valuable property. And yet council took this decision suddenly in November last year, against the advice of the executive officers, in the absence of community consultation. And this group of councillors was still quite new to their roles. Council officers have now been asked to develop a community consultation process after the decision was made. Surely consultation should occur before making such a decision. It's been stated that the decision made by council to sell the Rex cannot be rescinded. Council has rescinded many decisions in the past, many occasions, despite work having commenced. The most relevant one perhaps being the decision not to include the cinema in the Rex development. And then, despite work having commenced, following a huge outcry from the public, that decision was rescinded. My understanding of that piece of legislation is that it's a matter of how far work has progressed, what contracts have been signed, what contracts haven't been signed. It's not just a simple matter of has anything been done. There was a unanimous vote by 120 people at the recent public meeting calling on council to rescind the decision to sell the Rex. Surely our elected representatives should take this seriously. Rescinding the decision would enable alternative options to be explored in the context of comprehensive community consultation. As a ratepayer, the Rex project has become a financial problem, whichever way you look at it. Escalating of building costs is a concern. So is the prospect of selling the asset. It is probable that the Rex will be sold for much less than we paid for it, plus losing the money spent so far. The result being a substantial loss, no asset, no community services, no cinema, and nothing to show for the past 6 years. And we still need a plan for the services that were going to be housed in the Rex, and we'll still need to pay for the building of these. So yes, as a ratepayer, I'm concerned. To end on a positive note, however, my hope is that council will listen to the community, take seriously this call to rescind the decision to sell the Rex, and enable a comprehensive community engagement process to take place so that alternatives can be fully explored. There are many knowledgeable, experienced and creative people in this community, some of whom are already exploring alternatives.
That's our time.
I hope council will utilise these talents and rescind the motion to sell the Rex. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Item 10.3 is petitions, but we have no petitions for tonight's meeting. And as I have a conflict of interest for the next item on the agenda, under Council's governance rules, the Deputy Mayor is to take the chair. So I'd like to invite Councillor Bray to the chair, and I'll step out.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. We now move on to item 11, statutory planning, 11.1, which is PA 3219, 47 Albert Street, Creswick. Alterations and additions to existing building, display of signage, waiver of on-street car parking and the sale and consumption of liquor associated with a supermarket. I invite the Director of Community Development. I invite Pauline Maltzis, the Coordinator of Statutory Planning, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As mentioned, this is an application for alterations and additions to an existing building. The property is in a heritage overlay and signage is proposed, as well as a waiver of on-site car parking, and the sale of liquor in association with a supermarket is also proposed. Importantly, to note, planning approval is not required for the supermarket use itself, and the site has also historically been used as a supermarket, although currently the site is vacant. The application was advertised and 8 objections were received. All matters have been addressed and considered in determining to recommend approval for this proposal by council planning officers. And that concludes the introduction. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms Maltzis. We have a number of requests to address council tonight. So I'd like to invite Mr Justin Scryer, the Senior Planner at Ratio, to speak on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. I'll just get Justin into the meeting.
Okay.
Hello. Hi, just let me know if you can hear me.
Hello, Justin, you can hear us all right?
Yes.
I'm Councillor Jen Bray, Deputy Mayor. Welcome to tonight's meeting. I believe you're going to address council. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Justin Scryer, and firstly, I'll just apologise for the background noise. It's bath time in the house, and we've got a very grumpy toddler. At the outset, I would just like to note to council again that this property has previously been used as a Foodworks supermarket, and that use included a liquor licence for the sale of packaged liquor. And we say that the current proposal provides an opportunity to revitalise the premises and stimulate economic activity within the township. And this is a view shared by council's Economic Development Unit. The supporting application material has demonstrated that the local road network can accommodate the expected level of activity generated by the proposal. And I want to draw council's attention in particular to the fact that what is proposed is to utilise the existing laneway that divides the subject land and number 49 Albert Street for the purposes of loading and unloading. The subject land has legal right of carriage over this laneway, and this is clearly evident on the property's title, which has been supplied to council. It's important to also note that the long-term established use of the site as a supermarket is relevant when turning our minds to the ability of the area to accommodate demand for car parking generated by the proposal. The submitted material has successfully demonstrated that there is sufficient public car parking availability in the area to absorb the increased demand anticipated. This material was reviewed by council's Development Engineering Unit, who have supported that finding. In terms of the buildings and works and signage proposed, this component of the proposal will improve the appearance of the shopfront, which is currently vacant and poorly maintained. Importantly, works to the facade, including the signs and the demolition of the non-original canopy, will enhance the heritage significance of the place, a view also shared by council's heritage advisor. To liquor, the licence component of the proposal will be ancillary to the grocery offerings of the supermarket use, and it's therefore very unlikely to result in unreasonable amenity impacts on Creswick Township, nor will it result in an oversaturation of licensed premises within the township. I again remind council that the previous Foodworks supermarket use at the site included a liquor license for the sale of packaged liquor, and we're not aware of there being any historic complaints or concerns associated with this activity. I also note that there is a restrictive covenant on the certificate of title, which does not prohibit the sale of liquor as proposed in the application. The covenant refers to a specific portion of the subject site different to what is proposed in this application. And this determination has been confirmed by 2 independent pieces of legal advice, as noted on page 19 of the Planning Officer's Delegate Report. This is relevant as
No, you've got 30 seconds. Sorry. Continue.
Thank you. This is relevant as the legality of the proposed liquor licence has been raised in some objections to the application. I would also just say that the fact that the previous Foodworks supermarket had an operating liquor licence for many years is also pertinent to this point. That concludes my statements. I'll just close by stating, given the ongoing global pandemic, it's more important than ever that our communities can live locally, and this proposal that's contemplated tonight will make an important contribution to Creswick in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Squire. Do any councillors have any questions for the applicant? Councillor Henderson.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Mr. Squire. I notice we've drawn a comparison between operation of the old Foodworks supermarket and this proposal. Would you concede that they actually did have some off-street parking and did not require the removal of any car parking from Albert Street? Because they had a different access. They were able to access via Victoria Street. That's one question. I do have another, but I'm happy to hear the first one.
I would concede that access for the Foodworks was different, and that was, it's my understanding, that was via an arrangement through private land. And to that point, we're reiterating that that arrangement is not proposed in this case. Access is proposed via a carriageway easement for which the subject land has legal rights to. To the matter of car parking on site, I don't believe there was on-site car parking to the rear of the Foodworks. My understanding was that that area was specifically for loading and unloading. But in any case, when you're looking at car parking, the planning scheme rates for a supermarket are based on the floor area of the supermarket itself. So any number of car spaces that might have been provided to the rear of the land would not have fulfilled the total statutory requirement, which is in the order of 34 spaces, I believe. Secondly, I'll just reiterate that the application material supporting the proposal really clearly demonstrates that there is capacity within the local road network to accommodate the parking shortfall.
Yes, I see that in the application. Now, the other issue you touched upon was the liquor licence, and made mention of that the previous Foodworks had a liquor licence. My understanding, and you may or may not know this, but my understanding is that that liquor licence was transferred with the previous owner to what's now known as the British Hotel next door, and then subsequently transferred across to the current IGA. So whilst that was one liquor licence transferred around, it wasn't, licences aren't just given out. Like Roberta, you have to justify how many there are. And so that's the case, isn't it? That liquor licence was transferred from that building, did have one, but it was transferred twice. In fact, because the British Hotel, where that property originally was part of, actually sold its liquor licence and was closed down. And that's why there's a covenant not allowing further development. Is that your understanding, Mr. Chair?
To the first part of your question, I don't know for sure. I've not looked into the VGCLR's records of transfers of licences, but I wouldn't challenge you on that if you've got that information. The reason the comparison was made in our submission is that there have been questions raised in relation to whether or not the covenant on the land prohibits the sale of liquor from the site wholesale. And that's why that comparison has been made. As to the second part of your question, which I think is pointing me towards the cumulative impact of another liquor license in the township, that's certainly something that needs to be considered, and that's part of the reason why the proposal requires a planning permit. As to whether or not another boutique liquor license for packaged liquor for consumption off the premises would result in social or oversaturation issues, we would strongly say no. It's not a one-stop destination for liquor. It's a supermarket with an ancillary component of packaged liquor. And we say that's appropriate for the street and for the township. The BGCLR and Department of Environment, Water and Planning stipulate that for cumulative impact of liquor license to be a relevant consideration, one, the proposed license needs to trade past 11 p.m, which is not the case in this example. And two, there needs to be a defined cluster of licensed premises, which I also believe there is.
Thank you, Mr. Scryer. Does that satisfy your question? Thank you, Mr. Councillor Henderson. Do any other councillors have any questions? Councillor Hood.
A question for the officers. In the context that this application is seeking a complete waiver for car parking, picking up on an earlier comment, is it the case that under the current Hepburn planning scheme that a building of this size would necessitate 34 car parking spots?
Thank you for the question, councillor. If that's what's in the report, 34 required. That's the starting point for consideration of an application, and any reduction or waiver needs to be justified. And in this case, they've provided a traffic report.
Thank you.
And council engineers also support the reduction based on what is available in the street and nearby.
Perhaps I'll just suggest if councillors hold their general questions, if there are any questions for Mr. Scryer at this point. Thank you, Mr. Scryer. Thank you for coming in tonight. And our IT officer will let you out of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We now have Ms. Leah Clark, Managing Director of Inception Planning on behalf of Soul Poultices, to speak in objection to the application. Leah's here in person. Yes. Welcome, Leah.
Hi.
Leah, you have 3 minutes to the council.
Good evening all. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, councillors and council officers. Thanks for the opportunity to speak in relation to the officer recommendation for 47 Albert Street, Creswick. Whilst our client acknowledges the amended information submitted to council goes some way in addressing our council's original objection, there are a number of matters which we wish to highlight to councillors still of some concern. The loading and unloading and clarification required from council. Whilst the property was used as a supermarket, any existing use rights for loading and unloading of vehicles or reduction in car parking has lapsed due to the vacancy of the building of more than 2 years. On page number 26 of the officer's report, under the heading of use of the laneway/carriageway easement, officers outline that a condition is required to be placed on any approved permit requiring loading and unloading to be undertaken on the street. However, under the next heading, traffic vehicle manoeuvrability, officers then stipulate manoeuvrability is acceptable, however, requiring a minimum truck size of 6.4 metres. We therefore must assume any truck larger than the 6.4 metres is to load and unload in the one car space that is to be created by way of permit condition 1C. This is of some real concern, as this will undoubtedly have an adverse impact on the pedestrian and road safety within a transport zone, formerly also known as the road zone category 1, which is a Department of Transport road. We were unable to locate within the officer decision that the application was referred to the Department of Transport for comment as per clause 5229, land adjacent to a principal road network, and clause 63, which requires a mandatory referral for creation or alteration to an access to a road zone within a freeway. VCAT determined in Peninsula Blue Departments, clause 5229, land adjacent to a principal road network, not only applies to physical change to access, but also to any change to the use or development that may result in changes to the community, changes to the opportunity for traffic to approach or enter the road differently, without any exhaustive list of the type of changes that would trigger a permit under clause 5229. VCAT indicated that a change in the opportunity for traffic to approach or enter a road in terms of volume, frequency, or type of vehicle would trigger a permit.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Given this, will you request clarification from council as to the application was referred? And if so, we would appreciate to see comments from that. The use of the rear lane, which is privately owned. Condition 10 of the officer's recommendation requires a significant amount of information, which we would have thought should be provided prior to understanding if loading and unloading can actually lawfully be undertaken on site. Review of the salt traffic engineer's plans forming part of the agenda, it appears as though trucks are required to use a rear private road. Can I just finalise, sorry? I have a copy of the lease agreement, which I'm unsure why council hasn't been provided with that, but it has an end date and there's no mention of an end date in the officer's report. Condition 11 goes some way to address that. However, this road will not be able to be used for any vehicle movement. Open to questions.
Ms Clark, thank you for that presentation. Do you have, any councillors have a question for Ms Clark? Councillor Anderson?
Yes, Ms Clark, the vehicles mentioned in here as to be used are 6.4 metres long, and a cursory look at that road category 1, I just sort of know it as the Midland Highway, which is a major highway, arterial road, under Vic Roads control, but you can call it Department of Transport.
Yeah.
But there also is a road divider there, quite a substantial one, and quite a narrow part. That's 6.4 metres. If this load, if you looked at where that 6.4 metres of the land in relation to the traffic lane, notwithstanding it backing out, but even parked 6.4 metres from the curb is quite a distance. Have you looked at that?
Yes, thank you, councillor, for your question. Just to reiterate, the planning, the potential decision says that 6.4 can enter the site. So therefore, we would assume a supermarket of this size would receive trucks much larger than that. So they actually have to use that one car space out the front. So a 6.4 may still overhang, and your question's right. We're anticipating by reading this that trucks larger than 6.4 would be using it. So there's definitely concerns with loading and unloading.
Thanks, Ms Clark. Is there any other questions? Thank you for presenting to council tonight.
Thank you.
I now invite Mr Steve Sellers to speak in objection to the application.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr Sellers, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I note council have not made public their advice received from Russell Kennedy lawyers in relation to the restricted covenant. I understand the applicant has advice from Brad Hooper that supports his application. However, this is merely an opinion until tested. The history of the restrictive covenant dates back to when Bill Huntley needed to buy a sliver of land off the Ballarat Brewing Company, owner of the neighbouring British Hotel. The transfer of land was agreed on the condition the supermarket not sell liquor. In fact, the covenant is quite clear that the transferred land or any part of it is not to be used as or in conjunction with a licensed premise. The covenant does not just preclude the transferred land not be used, but specifically not be used in conjunction with either. The advice I received, we highlight the covenant restricts that they shall not use the land hereby transferred or any part of it, or permit or suffer any of it to be used as or in conjunction with the licensed premise as defined in the Liquor Control Act. We submit that the land that is burdened by the covenant is to be used in conjunction with the proposal of the sale packaged liquor. As per the Collins Dictionary definition, the meaning of in conjunction with is if one thing is done in conjunction with another, the two things are done or used together. Given this, the issuing of the permit would be to contravene the covenant, and therefore in accordance with section 61(4) of the Planning Environment Act 1987, council must refuse the application. If the applicant wanted the covenant substantially changed or removed, this should have been submitted at the same time as lodging the planning application. Should council ignore this, I obviously reserve my right to VCAT. I support also what someone said in regard to Salt Poultice. The traffic impact study, in point 10, it says that you are going to actually do a traffic impact study for all loading and unloading activity, with the emphasis I made on all. Brendan, or the applicant, made it quite clear at mediation in December that he intended to use my private road at the rear of the building. In fact, he indicated that would be the main use. That private road has not been assessed by council for any size truck entering or exiting in a forward direction, has not been assessed for sweep patterns. And so therefore, council would be turning a blind eye to any activity, unloading and loading activity taking place on my private road if it was not subject to the same scrutiny as the other lane.
You have about 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I could also answer Don's question in relation to the transfer of the licence, and it was transferred. The reason it was allowed to be there when I was a tenant of the Food Works is because I had common ownership. So common ownership can defunct the covenant. We never sought to have the covenant removed, but when I applied for the liquor licence at 47 Albert Street, we made a point to the Liquor Commission that there was a restrictive covenant. However, I owned the British Hotel and I owned the business at 47, so the covenant didn't come into play. We didn't remove the covenant. We transferred the licence from 47 to 45. Then we transferred again from 45 to 48.
Thank you, Mr. Sellers. I now invite Mr. Hayden Bolsher to speak in objection to the application. Is Hayden here tonight? And he's not on our list for coming in. Thank you to all those who have spoken to this application. Are there any further questions from councillors to our planners tonight regarding this application? Yes, councillor Hewitt.
Officers, is there any comment on Ms Clark's presentation about reports to the Department of Transport or Vic Roads? Do you have any comments to make about that?
An application is required to be referred, as Ms Clark did say, where there is an alteration or creation of access, and that's not what's proposed in this case. So therefore, statutory referral is not required.
Do any other councillors have any further questions?
My other question would be, I understand we have had legal advice that confirms the applicant's understanding of the covenant.
That is correct.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, councillors. We have a recommendation before us. And the council officer's recommendation I can read, which is to one, make a determination to issue a notice of decision to issue a planning permit at 47 Albert Street, Creswick, in accordance with the following recommendation and conditions. And two, having called notice of planning application PA 3219 to be given under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, and having considered all the matters required under section 60 of the Act, determines to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for alterations and additions, partial demolition to an existing building, displaying of signage, waiver of the required on-site car parking, and the sale of liquor associated with the supermarket at 47 Albert Street, Creswick, subject to the following conditions, which are in the agenda. I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a motion? Councillor Henderson.
So, Madam Mayor, I wish to move that council, having caused notice of the planning application under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987.
Councillor Henderson, can we put the motion up if we have it? So that people can read it? Is this available? Okay, sorry, Councillor Henderson, please continue.
Okay, I'll start again. That council, having caused notice of the planning application under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, brackets the Act to be given, and having considered all the matters required under section 60 of the Act, decides to issue a refusal to grant a permit, planning permit PA 3219, for alterations and additions, including partial demolition to an existing building, displaying signage, waiver of the required on-site car parking and the sale of liquor associated with the supermarket in respect of the land known as 47 Albert Street, Creswick, on the following grounds. 1, the waiver of car parking in association with the proposed supermarket use would result in detriment to the surrounding area. 2, the removal of existing car park in Albert Street. And 3, as per the officer's recommendation. So there's officer's recommendations about conditions here. So that's my motion. Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Just like to clarify the motion. Do we have a copy of the motion that we can see?
You change it a little.
Okay, some slight wording changes. Is it possible to bring that motion back up on the screen?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, I can bring that back up on screen. I'll need Councillor Henderson to reread part of the motion. I didn't get the second part of the motion, so if you could read from number 2, that would be appreciated.
Okay, so the first one is the waiver of car parking in association with the proposed supermarket. All of the first, you've got the first part of the motion, I take it, about the refusal.
I do. It was parts 2 and 3 that I don't have.
Okay, so 2, as I've got it here, as prepared in this motion by the officers, just says number 3. I put it as number 3, as per the officer's recommendation. That's what it says. And number 2 is the removal of existing car park in Albert Street, Creswick. So it does require the removal of an existing car park, not just a waiver.
Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hood, second. Would anyone like, Councillor Henderson would like to speak to the motion?
See, there's a little bit of consternation.
Sorry.
Excuse me, Deputy.
By my
Yeah.
I don't believe point 3 does either. I think.
staff. I mean, I didn't prepare this, actually. I asked the staff to prepare an
Just to clarify,
motion.
thank you, Councillor Henderson. I'm going to hand over to Rebecca.
I just think that point 3 reference to the officer's recommendation has been left in error. So I believe Councillor Henderson.
Okay.
As it is a refusal to grant the permit, we don't require the officer's recommendation.
Well, there would
So just to remove that confusion.
There's an error on behalf of the staff, then I take it. So I'll proceed with just the 2 items. That I believe that's sufficient for the argument in any event. So
Through, to speak to the motion.
I've got it
Sorry.
here printed out.
Just hold on a moment.
Yes, well, through you, Deputy Mayor, the motion that's Councillor Henderson has put forward is correct but it only requires item 1. So it's the notice of refusal. Thank you. Only point number 1. This one here. Yep.
As you've written it.
Yep. So that's, so this is, stop here.
Okay, I'll put that. Move with the car park, there's got to be one car.
Right, okay. So thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Keeping?
I'm keeping one and two, yes.
Can we bring up the motion again? If we can clarify the motion, please, before we continue. And councillor Henderson, can you confirm this is the motion you are putting?
Can't see it, Madam Mayor.
I'd like to stand in front of the screen.
Actually should be able to see all of my councillor colleagues.
Okay.
Clarification. That'll be sufficient.
Is that the motion? Thank you. And that,
Uh,
councillor Hood, you are seconding that motion?
Do that.
Just as a point of clarification, I do believe that I am required to see all of my councillor colleagues, and I can't do that. So it's only drawn to my attention on the.
Would you like to sit here, councillor Henderson, so you can see everybody?
Well, I won't be able to see them for the whole meeting. I'm not going to sit there for the whole meeting. Anyway, that's just a point made.
Okay, thank you. We're in the middle of a motion. We have a motion, we have a seconder. Councillor Henderson, you are speaking to the motion.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor. Look, colleagues, I actually know a fair bit about this site. I've known about it right from since I was that high, big enough to go in there. So this is a very tight site. It's not a matter of how wide the road is, how wide the laneway is. If we don't remove the car park in Albert Street, there's no way known a car or truck or anything can come out of there other than a pedestrian in a forward motion without going over the corner of the car park. When we did the streetscape, one of the most important community consultations was retention of as many car parks as we could in Albert Street, and that was extensive public consultation. And here we go, we're going to throw it out of the window. Well, I don't believe that's the case. And that laneway, if someone can come up there in a forward motion and come back in a 6.4 metre delivery truck, I notice it's called an SUV. My understanding of a recreational vehicle is not the same as a small delivery truck, because they're high and they're 2.4 metres wide, give or take a few centimetres. We've got a median strip that divides the highway, which is the Midland Highway. Even cars back there have a difficulty. Even cars parked there have closed shaves, and not only closed shaves, there's been several incidents there, luckily not life-threatening incidents, but there's been several incidents there. I think to add the delivery, and I noticed that we've had references to what the other one did. Well, the other one didn't come out of there, it came out of Victoria Street. And so this is a whole convoluted addition to a very, very busy street. It's going to be a problem into the future. As Creswick gets busier, the problem will become worse. And I think we're just sowing disaster into a street. The disaster waiting to happen now. There's been lots of consultation with Vic Roads over the years about the danger of that. It'll be added to, and I don't want to be a part of that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Henderson. Does anyone want to speak against the motion? Does anyone else would like to speak for the motion?
Yes, I will. Councillor Henderson has covered the shortfalls of this application quite adequately. I cannot escape the rule book, and if the Hepburn planning scheme requires that a building of this size necessitates 34 car parking spots, I have not heard any compelling evidence whatsoever that would justify a complete waiver of all of those parking spots.
Thanks, councillor.
Which would have an obvious impact in the surrounding area.
Any other councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? We have a motion before us. We have the motion up. All those in favour? Councillor Hood, councillor Simpson? In favour? Those against? Councillor Hewitt, councillor Bray. Do we have a quorum? Yeah. Yep, so that is carried, yes? That motion is carried. And I will now ask Councillor Dryly to rejoin the meeting. I will just, thank you, inform Councillor Dryly, the motion that was put was to refuse the permit, and that was carried.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bray. We're now moving on to item 11.2, which is planning application 335366, which is 66 High Street, Trentham. It's an amendment to the planning permit. I'd like to introduce Pauline Malsis, Coordinator of Statutory Planning, to introduce the report.
Thank you. This is a planning permit application 3353, which was issued for Trentham Community Hub in December of last year. Condition 1A of the permit required provision of 35 car parking spaces, and this being an increase from 10 that were proposed as part of the application. A Section 72 application has been submitted to Council requesting that condition 1A be modified to allow the 25 car spaces originally proposed on the site. Given there was initial support for a reduction to 25 spaces by the applicant and Council's engineers, and the reasoning for the inclusion of the additional 10 car spaces being that space was available on the land to accommodate additional car spaces, it's considered fair and reasonable to reconsider the condition in light of this, given the use of that space for car parking is not required, the use proposed, and would be in surplus, and it would also provide a situation where future potential use of the site or any change of the use would not leave space available for the land to consider that additional use if that was proposed in the future. Therefore, the recommendation in this case is that condition 1A be amended to allow 25 car spaces to be provided on the site, and that 35 car spaces will not be required. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Ms Malsis. I have a recommendation that Council support the amendment sought and determined to amend condition 1A of planning permit 3353 as follows that A, the provision of no less than 25 car parking spaces on site. I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hood.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson. Councillor Hood would like to speak to the motion.
Just briefly, Mayor, look, councillors, 25 car parking spots in the car park out at the back of what will be the new community centre is adequate. The plan also allows for disability access. And while car parking seems to be a flavour of tonight's meeting, we do have plenty of parking adjacent to the new community centre in Bath Street, Albert Street and High Street. And of course, the centre itself is located very centrally in Trentham, within walking distance for many people. So I'm very confident on behalf of the community that 25 spots is enough.
Thanks, Councillor Hood. Councillor Henderson, would you like to speak to the motion? Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? No. In that case, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously. Now, moving on to item 11.3, which is 7A Gunya Drive, PA 3334, 4-lot subdivision. Introduce Vijay Satakunajara, Manager of Planning and Development, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The proposal is actually for 4-lot subdivisions within the low density residential zone of the planning scheme. the land is located within the urban growth boundary of Trentham as well. During public consultation, we have received 6 submissions. Officer recommendation is to issue a notice of decision to issue a planning permit subject to conditions. The officer report submitted to council for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I now have any questions, please. No?
Yeah. At the moment, there seems to be a bit of flooding in some of the areas on the land here and some concern about stormwater and drainage. What conditions are currently in the recommendations that would address that? My first question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. We had actually requested, the engineering department had actually requested a detailed stormwater management and drainage plan, which actually outlines a number of minimum requirements for the plan to be consist of. When it's submitted, the engineers will review the plan. If they are satisfied, they will endorse the plan, and all the drainage works must be undertaken as per the approved plan. And also, there's going to be a 173 agreement on all the new titles, which will be ensuring all the work that has to be complied with has to be complied during construction stage as well as ongoing basis as well. Basically, all the conditions that are to be undertaken prior to the statement of compliance being issued must be complied with, and then whatever has to comply with during construction, which will all be outlined in the drainage plan, had to be constructed during construction. That's going to be sitting as a requirement under the 173 agreement, and also what has to be managed to ensure the drainage and stormwater management as per the endorsed plan will be sitting as a 173 agreement requirement. So all the new landowners of those 4 lots will be responsible to ensure the compliance as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do note that we have Ms. Steph Durant, the Principal Planner for Inception Planning, to speak on behalf of the applicant. If you'd like to come forward, Ms. Durant. I have 3 minutes to address council. Thanks.
Thank you, councillors, and thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. And we appreciate the report being considered at this meeting. Planning policy relating to Trentham specifically encourages development to occur within the growth boundary, and a more compact and efficient urban form is encouraged. The application for this subdivision directly supports these objectives given its location within the township boundary. It's also considered to reflect the low density character of the area, with lot sizes exceeding the minimum lot size in the low density residential zone, and being of a size that allows future dwellings to be set back from boundaries and for them to sit within a landscape setting. It's noted that a subdivision at 30 Victoria Street for 7 lots was recently issued by council and proposed all lots to be under 2,100 square metres. It's considered that the lots that are being proposed here, which are between 2,000 and 3,000 square metres, are not out of character. We'd also like to note that our client was not the applicant for the previous 2-lot subdivision at 7 Gunya Drive. They purchased this block of land after the titles were issued for that permit. And in order for the titles to be issued for a subdivision, council is required to issue a statement of compliance, which has to ensure that all conditions of that permit are met. As the title's been issued, all the conditions are considered met as part of that permit. If there were ongoing requirements relating to things such as landscaping or requirements for building envelopes on this lot, they would have had to be placed on title or put in a Section 173 agreement, so future owners are aware of that. As once the titles are issued, that actual permit is spent. The only restriction on the title is a covenant, and this relates to stormwater provision and sewer for future buildings, of which we're not proposing any buildings as part of this subdivision, and these conditions will carry over onto this permit. And we note that the proposed recommendation actually includes quite specific conditions around stormwater for the subdivision, as well as for future buildings under Section 173 agreement. We've participated in this process in good faith, providing a detailed written response to objectors back in December. And we also attended a consultation meeting in April. On both occasions, we put forward proposed amendments to the application, which are detailed in the attachments in the council report. We believe that our proposal in its current form provides an appropriate response to planning policy, and consider the conditions applied, we'll be able to adequately address any concerns that have been raised, drainage, access and amenity. And we would respectfully request that the application is supported.
Thank you, Ms Durant. Before you go, do councillors have any questions for Ms Durant? No? Thank you. So other general questions? I'd like to invite Mr William Benson and Ms Helen Benson to speak in objection to the application. Thanks, William. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, fellow councillors, thank you for the opportunity to address council today. Our objection to the unsuitability of this proposal remains on these unresolved grounds, that this will establish a precedent that will have a disastrous effect on the quality of future subdivisions for not only Trentham, but throughout the Shire. Access to the development. Loopholes within the infrastructure design manual have been manipulated by the applicant in order to establish their proposed access as suitable. A 5 metre wide driveway by 90 metres long with poor visibility and a suitable and safe exit is unacceptable. Stormwater drainage and environmental damage. Stormwater drainage has most definitely not come up with a satisfactory solution. The long-term damage to this site and adjacent sites will never be resolved adequately, while all statutory bodies do not take responsibility for mitigating the increasing problem that will only get worse because of increased hard surface runoff and the expected extreme effects of climate change. The current proposed water detention concepts will be inadequate. Additionally, it should not be the responsibility of individual landowners, such as ourselves, to take a neighbour to court to ensure that there is free flow of stormwater easements, which is mainly originating from council culverts and flowing through our property. Council will inherit long-term consequences if this approach to stormwater mitigation is adopted. The landscaping. Without amendment to the plan for our boundary section of the turning court, there will not be any possibility of meaningful plant screening, affording us any protection from the intrusive nature of the traffic movements in both visibility and noise, and particularly headlights after dark. This is based around a calculation, government calculation of 40 vehicle movements a day. Suitable plant screening will mitigate this problem only if the bitumen or concrete surface of some 120 metres is not hard on our boundary. In closing, it is impossible to imagine that with all the constraints and issues of this difficult site, that it can reasonably be expected to support 4 house lots for a site that only 15 months ago was approved for 1. The current zoning plan shows infill stopping at the boundary of 30 Victoria Street and 7A Gunya Drive on their boundary. It does not include 7A or any other land in Gunya Bend. Over $50 million approximately has been invested by Gunya Bend residents to establish a lifestyle, and you would be hard pressed to find any one of the 30 residents who live there who would agree that this is an appropriate development for their area. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Benson and Mrs Benson.
Sorry,
particular questions?
No, thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Jan Halliday and Ian Grant to speak in objection to the application. And you have 3 minutes, Jan. Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. There are so many issues about the subdivision that have not been resolved that one has to question the suitability of the site for development of any sort, let alone a 4-lot subdivision. The unresolved problems are drainage and flooding. There's an existing drainage problem at 7A Gunya Drive, the development site, and neighbouring properties. They flood every winter because the drainage easement ends in a blocked culvert and the water levels are wrong. There is nowhere for the water to go, so it floods. The proposed development would result in more runoff, and the proposed stormwater detention system won't work, particularly in winter when the water table is above ground level. You can't actually disperse water through a detention system that is already full. This means that the existing drainage and flooding problem will get worse if the subdivision goes ahead. Sewage disposal. There's a problem here. First, a macerating pump for each site is being expected to pump raw sewage up a steep hill for over 100 metres. That might be possible, but what happens to the sewage when there is a power outage? A frequent occurrence in Trentham. Waste disposal. A lineup of 12 or more bins on Gunya Drive outside someone else's house is unacceptable. This is one of the proposals for how waste disposal is going to be dealt with. In any case, can you imagine owners in the new subdivision dragging full bins up 120 metres of mostly steep driveway? The proposed alternative is a private collection system, which would be difficult to monitor and enforce, particularly as far as waste separation and recycling is concerned. And is the shared 5 metre wide driveway fit for any rubbish truck, private or otherwise? Another problem for Trentham and elsewhere is the precedent the subdivision would create. Having approved it, the council would have few grounds for refusing any similar opportunistic proposals in the future. So substandard subdivisions would follow. The application also includes a driveway, which, while it may technically comply, is not fit to serve 4 households, plus emergency vehicles and any other utility vehicles. The subdivision is totally out of character for the area. It would impose a cluster of houses in the middle of an uninterrupted green space. And to use the development at 30 Victoria Street, called Red Dog Court, as a yardstick for proposing 2,000 square metres sites, which don't exist anywhere else in Gunya Drive, is not appropriate. The comparison is misleading. Red Dog Court is a new, properly planned subdivision with properly designed road access, footpaths, street lighting, and so on. And it is on flat land that is not prone to flooding. By comparison, the proposed subdivision is an unsympathetic afterthought on an inappropriate site. Council's mission statement. Sorry, can I just finish my conclusion? The Council's mission statement acknowledges its responsibility to oversee development that is sympathetic to the existing character of the Shire. It is a problem when the interests of local residents are overridden by those of a Melbourne-based developer with no known affiliation for the area. I urge councillors to decide against the planning application.
Thank you.
Question?
Thank you, Ms. Halliday, and Ian Grant, I think is involved in that too. Yeah, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite David Coltzman and Ms. Margot Burrows to speak in objection to the application.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to address you. David and I have lived in the Gunya Bend estate for 4 years. The Gunya Bend estate was approved by Hepburn Shire in 2003 as a best practice model for a subdivision in a small regional town. It included requirements for street tree planting, dry stone walls, underground power, and large allotments with a specific prohibition on further subdivision. All of these features attracted us to move there. But by August 2020, the rot had set in. Council approved an ugly battle axe subdivision to create 7A Gunya Drive. It has a very narrow, very long drive on a steeply sloping site, at the bottom of which is a floodplain. Within weeks of the sale of this newly created lot, developers were at it again, seeking a further 4-lot subdivision at 7A, which brings us right here to tonight's meeting. If you approve this application, it will set a precedent in the Gunya Bend estate, and it will open the floodgates to further inappropriate subdivision and the consequent destruction of a once very special place in Trentham. We implore you to reject the application, recognising that not all 2,000 metre square blocks are the same. Because of the contours and the flood-prone areas on the property, the 4 house lots will be squeezed together in a tight fan around a far too small half circle at the end of a long, narrow alleyway. Current inadequate drainage and flooding issues will be exacerbated, and the remedies proposed are totally and completely inadequate. What liabilities for future councillors and ratepayers will arise from approving house lots on known flood-prone land? There is no actual street frontage for the 4 house lots, as access to Gunya Drive is only 5 metres wide. The impact of this is well demonstrated when you consider the rubbish bin collection when we all have 4 bins. Just look at this. All the bins piling up in the front of the neighbours and blocking the visibility to traffic on the road. Don't kick the planning can down the road. We want you to exercise your power as our elected representatives, not rubber stamp a recommendation from council planning officers. Many of you actually campaign to be a voice for local people and for finding responses to challenges by involving those who are affected on a day-to-day basis. Well, tonight, that's us, the local neighbours in Gunya Bend.
And 10 seconds.
Not a carpetbagger in Hawthorn. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms Burrows and Mr Coltsman. Councillors, do you have any other questions of our officers?
Councillor Brown?
Can I clarify a point about the driveway? It's been described as a long, narrow, it's 5 metres by 90 metres plus an additional amount. Is that a driveway that 2 cars can pass each other on? Is it acceptable for a 4-lot subdivision to have a driveway that narrow and that long?
Through the chair, councillor, good question. 5 metres fence to fence is narrow. A 5 metre carriageway would enable 2 vehicles to pass, and we've probably got some public roads that are of that width, although few in nature, but you can still get 2 vehicles past. In this case, I think the proposal is 5 metres fence line to fence line, so the formation width of a driveway would be slightly narrower than that, and it would be difficult to get 2 vehicles past, acknowledging that it will be a very slow speed environment.
So to follow that question up, how does this driveway proposal and the court bowl allow for emergency vehicles in, say, in a bushfire situation?
Through the chair, my understanding is that this has been referred to the CFA and the CFA have accepted it, and CFA would typically accept a 4 metre width requirement, which this satisfies. So that's, I guess, addressing emergency vehicles. For utility vehicles, such as council's waste collection service, for example, that would be a requirement to collect from the main street, because this would be a private driveway. This is not deemed to be a public road, and therefore public services would be provided on the public roadway.
Excuse me, Mr. Lucas, while you're up there, could you confirm that a CFA truck can turn in that space?
That's my understanding, that the referral went to the CFA and the CFA is satisfied with what's been put forward, hence the recommendation tonight.
Thanks, Mr Lucas. Any other questions, councillors? Okay, we have an officer's recommendation, and that is that Council 1 makes a determination to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit at 7A Gunya Drive, Trentham, in accordance with the following recommendation and conditions. And 2, having caused notice of planning application PA 3334 to be given under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, the Act determines to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the 4 lot subdivision of land at 7A Gunya Drive, Trentham, subject to the following conditions, and that's as listed in the agenda. Councillors, I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hood, and you're moving?
Yes. I believe this can be displayed on the screen.
You're moving an alternate motion?
Yes, I am, Mr Mayor. That council, having caused notice of the planning application under section 52 of the Planning Act 1987, and having considered all the matters required under section 60 of the Act, decides to refuse to grant a planning permit, PA 3334, for a 4-lot subdivision in respect of the land known as 7A Gunya Drive, Trentham, on the following grounds. 1, the proposal does not adequately address the flooding and inundation risks. 2, the width of the proposed driveway presents a safety and access risk, especially for emergency vehicles in a known bushfire risk area.
I'm just checking that that's the wording that you've just,
Yes, that's it.
do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Henderson? Councillor Hood, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, this application could accurately be described as the mother of all battle axe developments. I'll give 3 main reasons as to why the permit should not be granted. The main reason being flooding and inundation, which of course is very topical in relation to climate change and the frequency of extreme events. It's absolutely extraordinary that the North Central Catchment Management Authority has not determined or assessed this area for the 1 in 100-year event, and that they note that a portion of the property may be subject to inundation. Councillors, we're all in possession of some fairly graphic photographs of very recent evidence of how bad the flooding is in that area. A question would be, given that we are in possession of such an audit trail of documentation, including photos, if we were to issue this permit, what liability would that expose council to when future residents incur significant flood damage to their homes? A second major point is, as we've heard tonight, the narrow driveway is only 5 metres wide, and down to the bowl of the proposed court is 150 metres long. I can only wonder what liability, again, council may be exposed to if and when a CFA truck or any other emergency vehicle is impeded in its access. Having such a tight bowl and concentration of 4 houses is not in keeping with rural outlook and would be conspicuously out of place. We've heard tonight about the rubbish bin collection. Dragging 16 rubbish bins 150 metres uphill and lined up along Gunya Drive is highly impractical. The third issue, which has briefly been touched on, is what happens under the frequent occurrence in Trentham of unplanned electricity power interruptions. Where does the sewerage go? We've heard this afternoon that there's a clear risk that it goes to the environment. Councillors, I urge you to support the alternate motion. Urbanising small rural towns like Trentham with poor quality, inappropriate overdevelopment on unsuitable sites is certainly not part of the Trentham Town Plan, nor is it the best way forward. This proposal could be seen to offering maximum benefit for the developer at the expense of ratepayers and residents, and it would pose a risk of an unwelcome precedent which would change the area's character irrevocably. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Hood. Councillor Henderson, speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think my colleague, Councillor Hood, has covered most of the points. But more graphically, when we talk about high risk, Trentham is one of the 52 recognised highest at-risk places in the state of Victoria. It's also storm prone. As we've seen recently, it doesn't take much to rip the heart out of a place like Trentham. If we, for example, thought we were safe in Creswick. We have houses there that are up on the top of a hill, severely impacted by torrential rain and storms and flooded, some of them to 1.5 metres high. And they're on the top of a hill. We've had floods that go through under big track drains, for example, that flooded out whole heaps of houses. And then people say, well, it's not my responsibility. Well, the culvert goes, but once it goes, it's not our responsibility. So sometimes someone has to take responsibility, and I believe on this occasion, it's the Hepburn Shire Council. We have to be the protector of our residents. And I heard it eloquently put. It's one thing to stand up in an election campaign to say, we're going to represent you. And after we're elected, to come and say, oh, well, you know, this time we're not going to represent you. I genuinely have a heartfelt belief that this is the wrong thing. Our planners, since I've been on this council since 2008, have told me that battle axe developments are not a good thing. As my colleague says, here you go, here's the mother of all battle axes, or even the father, probably the son of all of them. Here we go, we've got a... How do we discriminate against people? So people with a disability can't buy those houses because they've got to drag, if we're going to have a green bin and a glass bin and a red bin, we might have 4 bins. How are they going to drag them uphill all the way up there? So only the fittest people can live in this street. We're going to just say, well, there you go. You've got to be fit to live in Gunya Drive, particularly around that number 7. So I can't see any saving graces. Floods, fire, risk. It's all right to say that a fire truck can go up there and it's only 2.3 wide or whatever it's got to be, and it's only 4 metres. Well, if one truck's coming to try and get in and a heap of residents are trying to get out, there's no room. Who's going to back up? Are the people going to back up into the fire? Or is the fire truck going to back up? Or are we going to knock the fences over and go wherever? It's as simple as that. It's not I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's a good planning outcome.
10 seconds, Councillor.
And I commend the officers for the hard work they've done. I just don't happen to agree with them. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Bray.
Thank you. I, with some reluctance, would like to speak against the motion. I have a lot of sympathy for the residents of Gunya Drive who bought into this area thinking they were having a best possible good quality development outcome for a rural, sort of rural setting. Why I'm speaking against the motion is that I sometimes worry that when we refuse a permit, we could be looking at a VCAT hearing down the track. And while that should not come into our consideration really when we're taking these decisions, the issue can be, how can we create the best possible outcome for this planning situation? And from past experience with other applications, council can often put a lot of work into trying to make sure that the outcomes in any application are the best. And it might be a best compromise really for residents and developers. In this case, we've seen that the officers have worked to create a Section 173 agreement to ensure that the drainage is dealt with in a really comprehensive way so that compliance must be it must comply that the post-development water flow does not exceed pre-development water flow, and so that drainage is dealt with. I haven't used the correct language, but that's the essence of what I'm explaining. Putting things like these into an application like this gives council some degree of control over how this application will end up. If we refuse it tonight, my concern might be that at a later hearing at VCAT, we don't have the opportunity to put any controls on this application. So I hear that the road issues can be qualified by the CFA to be acceptable. I just worry that refusing the permit might mean we lose an opportunity to ensure that this has better outcomes for residents. Thanks.
Thanks, councillor Bray. Anyone else, any other councillor like to speak for or against the motion?
Mr Mayor, I'd
like to write a reply.
Yeah, I'd like to write a reply. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would respectfully suggest that the best possible outcome in this application is that there be no houses down there, not 4, in amongst all that water. And I do note that it was as recently as August 2020 that this council, our predecessors, granted the subdivision there for 1 lot. And that had vegetation requirements to it. And they were never complied with. So that erodes my confidence that no matter how robust the Section 173 agreement is on paper, I question how well it will be monitored and enforced. And I also note that it's all not entirely council's doing. Some of the assets down there that are contributing to the flooding, the culverts, belong to VicTrack. And they're not a council issue. So the 4 new residents and the existing residents, we would be throwing them to the wolves, letting them just deal with VicTrack, not on. So I worry about compliance. The best outcome is that at the end of a 150 metre long, 5 metre wide driveway, in amongst all that water, we do not put 4 houses down there.
Thank you, councillor Hood. We'll now put the motion to the vote, and we have seen the motion on the screen. I'm certain, councillors, all those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, councillor Hood, councillor Henderson, councillor Hewitt and councillor Simpson. All those against? Councillor Dryling and councillor Bray. The motion is carried. Now moving on to item 12.1, which is adoption of Hepburn Shire Council Aquatic Strategy. Pleased to introduce councillor Leslie Hewitt to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present council with the proposed final Hepburn Shire Council Aquatic Strategy and the Hepburn Shire Council Aquatic Summary Report for adoption. The Aquatic Strategy provides a 10-year priority plan to guide the future strategic direction, infrastructure development priorities, asset management, and maximise participation and programming opportunities to contribute to the health, wellbeing and livability of the community of Hepburn Shire. This follows a very extensive piece of work by OTM, the consulting company, by officers, and considerable community engagement across the Shire, where it's become clear to us in the feedback that that there is a strong desire in the Shire for an indoor aquatic centre, along with other aquatic facilities. The Hepburn Shire Aquatic Strategy tells us that the higher order indicative costs associated with implementing the actions arising from the aquatic strategy are estimated to be between 5.9 million and 7.98 million. It's not included currently in the council's long-term financial planning and would be the subject to achieving funding as part of future council budgeting. There's been a strong feedback from the community that one of the urgent or priority activities is to investigate the feasibility of an indoor aquatic centre somewhere in the Shire and the costs of that to council, both in terms of building and operating. That will need further consideration by council at the appropriate time. The Draft aquatic strategy was endorsed for public exhibition at the 15th of February 2022 council meeting, and following the public exhibition period undertaken between 16th of February, 18th of March, there were 65 responses through community pop-up sessions, a community survey, key stakeholder interviews and written submissions. And I have to commend the community, but also the staff for the quality of the feedback received. What it showed was strong support for an indoor aquatic facility to be a key priority. Feasibility planning for the future provision of indoor aquatics should progress immediately. The vision statement should reference an indoor year-round facility, and the Mayor has clarified that in question time today. The report also needs to strengthen the focus on universal and inclusive access at the aquatic facilities. Currently, our aquatic facilities are not accessible to people with a disability because of the structure, because of the temperature and so on. And to include and priority works on the existing facilities that should focus on compliance issues until a feasibility study has been completed. As a result of that community consultation, there have been minor changes to the aquatic strategy that is up for adoption today. You can read them in the report and the agenda without me going out of it. So I would, presenting this report, I would suggest to my fellow councillors that the importance and the support for this that came from the community, that we support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. And the recommendation that we have is that council the officer's recommendation as per the agenda, and I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hewitt.
Oh, sorry, questions.
Sorry.
Before we go.
Ask for questions. Any questions from councillors?
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, my question to Ms McCallum, the report indicates that an amount of $103,000 is necessary to complete the compliance and health and safety work to the current facilities. Is that amount seems relatively small, modest? Is that sufficient to address those issues?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hood. The amount of $103,000 that is noted in the officer's recommendation is for the second component of those works. Those works are currently underway in the current financial year and were funded through the mid-year budget review. So the monetary amount of $103,000 is to continue those works into the new financial year.
Thank you.
And any other questions, councillors? No. All right. We have a mover.
Councillor Hewitt, what would you be moving?
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And a seconder for that?
Councillor Hood. Councillor Hewitt, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to ask my fellow councillors to support the motion, given the extensive work and that's been done by OTIUM, by staff and by the community in response to the documentation. It's been a thorough process and a detailed process. I've been personally particularly impressed with the work done in the public exhibition period where stakeholders, which included lobby groups from Creswick and Darcy, but also all our schools. The Disability Advisory Committee have all been consulted. Feedback has been incorporated into the document. It's something that residents have been asking for, as I understand it, at least to be considered, at least since 1988 was the first. And so I think council staff and the community should be commended for getting it to this point. Doesn't mean anything other than we accept that this is something that's a need as well as a want. And the next step is to look at a feasibility study and a business case to see how and if this can be implemented, what's wanted can be implemented.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Councillor Hood, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm fully supportive of this initiative, and like Councillor Hewitt, I applaud the officers for the work they've done to get it to this stage. And I am supportive of the investment of $160,000 to do more investigative work and put the business case together, because I am very mindful, as we all ought to be, that the substantial capital cost to build an indoor facility and run it is not yet included in our financial long-term plans, and will be very dependent on securing some pretty large grant funding. So I look forward to that investigative work being done, and I support this initiative.
Thanks, Councillor Hood. Any other speakers for or against?
Councillor Bray.
I'd like to speak for the motion. I'm very thrilled that it's come to this point. I think what's been very exciting is to see how the community have responded to the questionnaire, and it's clearly shown there's a strong, not just a want, but a need in the community, in the whole of Hepburn Shire, for some form of, well, a relook at all of our aquatics, but the indications about the indoor water facility has come through very strongly. As Councillor Hood says, it doesn't mean we'll necessarily adopt it, but at least we can start the feasibility study, and that will give us a bit more of an idea what we're looking at in terms of the cost to build, the cost to maintain, and to run this facility, and of course the big question of where it will end up going. So I'm very happy to endorse this aquatic strategy.
Councillor Bray.
And if no one else is interested in speaking for or against the motion, we'll put it to the vote. Councillors, all those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously. We're now moving on to item 12.2, which is the Community Grants Program for 21-22, and it's round 3. And I'd like to introduce Councillor Jen Bray, our Deputy Mayor, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Councillor Giley. Our Community Grants Program for 2021-22 aligns with the council plan to support and strengthen the resilience of the community. And eligible community groups can access funds in 4 rounds annually. 14 applications were received for round 3 and 11 were recommended for full funding. Currently, 3 applications were deemed ineligible and none were received from Bircher Holcombe Ward in the category E, which is the charitable purposes category. So that will be reopened for, or it has been reopened for them to apply. The community grants before us are from Daylesford Table Tennis Association, 2,500 for a defibrillator. From Hepburn Wildlife Shelter, an amount of 2,500 for an event called the Day of the Wombat. From the Clunes Writers Group, auspiced by Clunes Neighbourhood House, an amount of $1,671 for an anthology of works publication. From Trentham District Historical Society, amount of $2,500 for the Trentham Timeline Project. From Hepburn Whole Foods Collective, an amount of $1,795 for the Whole Foods 10th Anniversary Cookbook. From Orienteering Victoria, an amount of $2,500 for the Australian Orienteering Carnival with a subsidised entry for locals. From Seeding Victoria Inc, based in Creswick, the sum of $2,491.65 for a seed collection for the Future project. The U3A for Hepburn Shire, a sum of $1,800 for Classics for Kids program. The Trentham Lions Club, $2,000 for the Trentham Lions Wood for the Needy. St John's Creswick Emergency Relief, $2,000 for additional relief for vulnerable persons. And the Clunes Neighbourhood House, $2,000 for Open House Shared, a storytelling program for vulnerable members of the community. So I commend this report to my councillor colleagues' consideration.
Thanks, councillor Bray. Do we have any questions on this report? In that case, I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Henderson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. We have the seconder. Right. Councillor Henderson, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, these may seem, when we're talking about $5 million for this and 10 million for that, something else, you know, $300,000. These small amounts, we think, oh yeah, they're a small amount. The organisations that are in receipt of these, they've had to go through a whole gambit of smarty grants. They've had to go and get all the figures. They've had to work out how they're going to do it. And they land up with a whole $2,000. Now, some of it might look easy, but $2,000 for these organisations is a lot of money. And they do stretch it a long way. I personally know, I've been involved with these programs for many, many years. I do know that the people who get this money appreciate it and they know they put it to good use. So I commend these to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Henderson. Councillor Bray, would you like to speak?
I support councillor Henderson's comments.
Thanks, councillor Bray. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? No. And in that case, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to item 13, which 13.1, which is the proposed renaming of the geographic feature Crow Creek. And I'll introduce this report. It is proposed that Jim Crow Creek be renamed to Lani Baramal Yaluk in line with recommendations for the, just speak to this one. From representatives, I'll start again. It is proposed that Jim Crow Creek be renamed to Lani Baramal Yaluk in line with recommendations from representatives of the local traditional owners of the Djadja The proposal is consistent with the relevant key council plans and policies and also responds to the broader community advocacy in relation to the offensive and racist associations of the name. Council has provided extensive information to the community about the proposed renaming, and it has undertaken a community consultation process in line with the state government's naming rules for places in Victoria, 2016. The consultation results demonstrate that while there are strongly held views both in support as well as opposing the proposal, the overall community sentiment is clearly in support of the proposed renaming. Councillors, do you have any questions of the board?
I have a question to Ms McCallum. Ms McCallum, I understand that, as we all understand, that the proposal is also being considered by Mount Alexander Shire. Do you have any information on where they're at with the proposal?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Mount Alexander Shire Council considered a report last night of similar nature, and the council, I can't get the word out, unanimously, there you go, voted in support of the renaming of Jim Crow Creek.
Thank you, Ms McCallum.
Any other questions? Councillor Bray.
I understand that in the responses coming back, there was a clause that said anyone who doesn't respond is tacitly considering to support the application to rename the creek. in our report, if you took those tacit responses out, would there still be the same overwhelming support for, or at least is there support for the renaming?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bray. Yes, that is correct. In short, the tacit responses are considered to be in support of the renaming. Removing those, there is still strong support for the renaming of Jim Crow Creek.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? We do have a recommendation before us, and that is that Council 1 resolves to recommend to Geographic Names Victoria for its consideration that Jim Crow Creek be renamed to Lani Balramal Yaluk. 2, email or write to all respondents to the proposed renaming consultation survey undertaken between the 30th September 21 to 12th November 21, informing them of Council's decision to recommend the proposed renaming, Council's responses to key issues received from community objectors, and the opportunity for objectors to appeal the Geographic Names Victoria. Councillors, I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Henderson, and you're moving.
Yes, I'm moving off this recommendation.
Thank you. And Councillor Hewitt seconding. Thank you. Councillor Henderson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Well, what a long saga this has been. I can remember this going on almost, well, it's been going on for years and years, and I think it's a credit to the hard work put in by our RAP committee, by the community, and all of our council officers, and indeed the councillors. And I'm talking about not just the councillors here today, but previous councillors who long wanted to see this happen. It's been a long time in coming, but I'm even reflecting, thinking that Captain Hepburn, if he was as educated as we are today, wouldn't have referred to it as Jim Crow Creek. And I'm pretty sure that the people who have come to know and love the creek as Jim Crow still respect the traditional owners of the land. And much as I respect their thoughts on that, and probably most of them don't disrespect the fact that they'll be like me, Mr. Mayor, they'll still sometimes revert to feet and inches, and some of them will still refer it to the Jim Crow Creek, just as like I'll refer to feet and inches instead of the metric measure. I do take on board their feelings about it. They've grown up with it. They have some affinity with it. However, time does move on, and it is time we recognised that. I think in old days, probably people that were going around there wouldn't have referred it to any name. They would have just said, we're going down the creek or we're going down the river. Like I did as a kid. I never went down the Slaty Creek. I went down the creek. But we must have a name for things, and if we must, let's have a good name. Let's have a proper name, and let's recognise just where this creek should be, and it should be in the proper name. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Bray, Hewitt, sorry. Like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would, and like to endorse Councillor Hood's, Councillor Henderson's comments. Thank the community who first brought this up many years ago, and for whom, as you said, Councillor Henderson, will feel this is a long time coming. I'd like to recognise now publicly the work of our former RAP committee in following this through, and there are particular members of that who contributed to the excellent information that was made available to the community, including Barry Golding. And I'd like to particularly call out Donna Spiller, who was our reconciliation officer at the time, who has made sure that we as a council have followed what we needed to do by the Geographic Place Names of Victoria to make sure that our process for this do fit with what's required. We can only, as a council, recommend to Geographic Place Names Victoria for the name change. And that's, if this motion is passed, what we'll be doing. Like Councillor Henderson, I recognise that there are some in the community who are have very strong feelings against renaming the creek, but there are others who have equally strong feelings in support of it. And it was certainly a privilege to read all of the submissions and to hear the people speak at the special council meeting. I would like to say that it doesn't actually change history. It recognises pre-colonial history. And I have to say, found it somewhat ironic that those who felt that in changing the name, we were erasing history, did not recognise that the name itself erased the history of the Jara people. And to me, we're reinstating language, but we're also acknowledging that history. And it makes me proud to be part of Hepburn Shire. We've done in doing this, but also in what we did and what the Reconciliation Action Committee did in the Frontiers War Memorial. These are the steps that we can take. And some people, in objecting to the name change, said, well, it's not that important or it doesn't really matter. The reality is it does matter. It matters to the Jara, it matters to other First Nations people, and it matters to those numerous people who responded encouraging us to do it and who have fought for this or raised this for a long time. So I thank them for doing it. I thank the officers who've worked on this. I thank the members of the RAP. And as Councillor Henderson pointed out, we might be at the final point of the process, but it's been other councillors that have got us to this point as well. So thank you to them as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Would any other councillor like to speak for against the motion? Yep, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'll be brief. I fully support this name change. Quite clear, and I applaud the fact that it's been undergone through such a comprehensive consultation process with the community. Quite clearly, the current name is offensive to our First Nations people. That leaves us with a choice. We can leave it as it is, turn a blind eye, or we can change it. And by changing it, we'd be showing some respect and cultural awareness to our First Nations people. And I do believe that this council is very serious about reconciliation and has done some great work in that regard. And this would be yet another important step in the right direction.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Councillor Bray.
Thanks, Councillor Dryly. I support fully this motion to make recommendation that the creek should be named Lani Baramal Yaluk. And I do understand that there are members of our community who have grown up with the old name for the creek, and for them, that holds special meaning. But this will not be lost to history. That name will be retained in the records so that we understand the full history of this area. However, the time has come to move forward, and it is no longer appropriate to hold onto a name that has racist connotations, that causes pain and distress to our traditional owners and to others in our community. By reinstating a Jara name, we're remembering a history that goes back thousands of years. By using the name Lani Baramal Yaluk, we're remembering and learning about Emu Dreaming Place, connecting to country so that we can respect it and its caretakers, the Jara people, and learn how to take care of country and to be part of it. This is a step forward. It's a step towards working together in reconciliation.
Thanks, Councillor Bray. Are there any other councillors to speak for or against? No, I will put it to the vote, and all those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 13.2, which is we're awarding a contract to the intersection realignment of Kingston Road, Kingston. And that's being introduced by Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is the awarding of contract HEPBU RFT, sorry, 2002-3, intersection realignment of the Kingston Road, Kingston. And I think that the purpose of this report is for council to award that contract on the intersection realignment. The project is fully funded through the federal government Black Spot program due to the intersection being the site of a double fatality in December 2019. Following the incident, officers met with concerned community members. Whilst initial minor improvements were made to the intersection, officers with community support have continued to explore opportunities for more significant improvements at the intersection. The officers have undertaken a request for tender process in accordance with council's procurement policy to invite the submissions for the realignment of this intersection, ensure identified safety improvement can be realised. And we actually have the officer's recommendation there, council. The contract to Fulton Hogan Industries for a fixed price of $319,438.66.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and the rest of that motion is in the agenda, items 2, 3 and 4. And I'm in search of a motion. Oh, I'm assuming there's any questions, councillors? Yep. Do I have a mover? Councillor Bray, Councillor Henderson seconding. Those in favour? Oh, do you want to speak to the motion, sorry?
No, thank you.
Anyone else? No. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Moving on to 13.3, which is the award of a contract, HEPBU RFT 2201, Old Ballarat Road, Clunes Bridge construction. I'll introduce this, which is the purpose of this report is for council to award contract HEPBU RFT 2022-01, replacement of Old Ballarat Road Bridge, Evansford. Officers have undertaken a request for tender process in accordance with council's procurement policy to invite submissions for the replacement of the bridge structure. The bridge is currently at the end of its useful life and scheduled for replacement as part of our asset renewal program. We have a recommendation for its councillors. I won't read it out. It's in our agenda. Do we have any questions for officers? Councillor Henderson?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor. I just want to ask if we, in the awarding of this contract, if we will be holding enough retention to make sure that this job is done properly, and if it requires rectification, works, remedial works, that money will be held until such time as satisfactorily completed.
Through you, Mr Chair. Thank you, councillor. And the short answer to your question is yes. It is a fairly standard approach for construction contracts to have those provisions in our contracts, and this is no different.
Any other questions, councillors? So the important thing in this recommendation is that we're awarding it a fixed lump sum of $500,039.10 exclusive GST to On-Track Civil Pty Ltd. And I'm in search of a motion, councillors. Henderson?
I've moved the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And seconder? Councillor Bray. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Henderson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this may, from reading the report, this contractor on the face of it may not seem to have great experience at bridge building, but as a creature of the industry, I know that you don't have to be a plumber get a plumbing job done, go and hire a plumber. I suspect that if this company has required ability to hire bridge builders and engineers and so on. You don't have to be a bridge builder to get a contract to build a bridge. You have to have bridge builders to do it. So I'm pretty confident that our review panel has gone through there and looked at it thoroughly. And I assume would have asked. But I'm thinking that what capacity does this company have? So I think having satisfied that, I'm happy to recommend to my colleagues. Thank you.
Councillor, thanks, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Bray, would you like to speak? Any other speakers? No? We'll move to the vote, and all those in favour, please raise your hand. It's carried unanimously. Moving on to item now 14.1, which is the proposed changes to the differential rating system. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Andrew Burgess to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, at the special meeting of Council held on Tuesday, the 29th of June 2021, Council moved the following resolution: the Council bring forward a project to model possible changes to the rating differentials as outlined in draft revenue and rating plan at that time and received as part of the community submission process, noting that findings of the project will be available for councillors to consider as part of our 22-23 budget process. Over the period of this project, councillors, 4 council briefing sessions have been held to discuss and explore what were 7 possible changes at the time in the differential rating system. A background paper has been presented and covering all those 7 possible changes to the system. The background paper identified that 4 of the 7 possible changes to the system merit further consideration for possible implementation, and a community engagement paper has been produced in order to be able to seek community feedback on those 4 possible changes. Those areas identified, councillors, were short-term accommodation in an increase there, social housing to have a decrease in the differential rate, farming properties or certified farming properties to have a decrease in the rate, and vacant land township to be increased. Councillors, the report outlines the benefits, the disadvantages and the financial impacts for the proposed changes for your consideration. And if you approve release tonight for public engagement, officers will then undertake further or seek further community feedback on the support for or against the proposed changes that are in the report. There is a recommendation that is in the report. Councillors, I'll hand back to you, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Burgess. Do you have any questions for Mr. Burgess, Councillor? Councillor Bray?
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Looking at the community engagement paper, this document is intended to go out to the community to get feedback from the community. In the paper, it suggests that there are 4 changes that you've just outlined to increase a differential rate or increase the rate for residential properties used for short-term accommodation. In other words, to increase that rate, to reduce the rate to 0 or to a low figure for any property that is providing social housing, to reduce the rate for any farming properties that are certified to be sustainably operating, and to increase the rate for vacant land in a township. My question is, are any of these going to increase the amount of revenue that council can get from its rates? And if not, what is the purpose of changing these differential rates?
Through the Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bray. The answer is no, it doesn't increase the amount of revenue that council receives from our rating base, full stop. It just puts the differentials into different areas for councillors to consider for payments from our community. And the purpose and the intention of doing that is responding to community feedback that was received as part of the Hepburn Together project undertaken by Councillor earlier on last year. And with the key functions being in relation to short-term accommodation, looking at addressing the issue that this shire faces around accommodation and trying to find options for providing further accommodation opportunities within the shire. In relation to the certified farming practices and properties, again, we had strong feedback in relation to making sure there were ways that we were incentivising people to look after the land and to farm and tend the land, and that is intended to support that. In relation to the social housing situation, again, we are very much aware of the social housing needs for our community, and this would look at all the non-government or social housing available and reducing that to certainly support the sector to be able to provide social housing in that space. And the third one, our vacant land township, Councillor, is around making sure that we are encouraging development within our land, within our township, sorry, that we don't, and we're continuing to making sure that that is encouraging people to invest in and bring life into our townships.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess.
If I may have a follow-up.
We'll just go to Brian first. Councillor Hood.
Thank you. A question for Mr. Burgess, if I may. The officer's recommendation 1B is that we introduce speculates on a change that would be a new differential rate for non-government residential properties that are used for provision of social housing and set at zero, in other words, a waiver of rates. Is that legally possible?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for that question, Councillor Hood. We're actually investigating the position in relation to a zero rate base. At this stage, I don't have a final answer on that, but I am led to believe that we need to follow that through further to identify whether a 0% increase is in fact possible and legal. My understanding is that we will take further advice on that and then provide that advice back to council. What we would be doing is seeking, if this goes out to a public consultation, seeking whether there is support to actually lower that rate at whatever that percentage rate might be in the final submissions for council to consider.
Thank you. Councillor Bray.
Thanks, Mr. Burgess. I suppose my question is, this paper is a community engagement paper, which is a bit of discussion, a bit of background. If we approve this recommendation before us tonight from officers, can I just clarify that we are not actually adopting any of these 4 changes tonight, but we're rather simply putting these 4 options before the community to gain their comment and feedback, so that we would make a decision at a later council meeting about whether they would actually go into our rating plan. Is that correct?
Through the Mayor, that is correct, Councillor Bray. It's not adopting it. It is about getting further consultation and community feedback in relation to these 4 particular areas.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Councillor Hood.
Mr. Burgess, you've explained what the purpose of the paper was. Is there any actual evidence that rating differentials alter people's behaviour in line with the proposed, the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve? So, and I don't, any evidence anywhere in local government that changing rating differentials actually produces the outcomes that you've mentioned in your introduction. And then I have another question.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Within the paper, we've identified the intention and the rationale to do this.
There is nothing in there that I can definitively point to for council to say, yes, if you made that decision, we would change people's, we would have it would have an immediate change to achieve the goals that we're talking about there. But certainly, councillors, it does paint a clear intention for council what you may want to point to for our community to consider further. But there's nothing in that paper, councillor, that directly talks to that evidence of that.
Thank you. And can I have one? You've replied to councillor Bray that the change in rating differentials won't alter the amount of money, revenue received by council. Could you give us some idea of, and I appreciate that these will be indicative, of what the costs might be, or would there be costs to council without any increase in revenue of changing the rating differential initially and then implementing it and then continuing to process it? Would there be a cost to council?
Through the Mayor, and again, Councillor Hewitt, look, there certainly is a cost to council, without a doubt. This project has already had a cost to council of some $50,000 odd. If I can use the example in relation to the short-term accommodation, there would be a fee of around about $10,000 a year to employ a company to actually search for short-term accommodation providers within the Shire to be able to recoup some of that funds, some of those funds, and which we wouldn't recoup that $10,000 from that search. And there are other ongoing administrative costs and fees there that would certainly be incurred by council as a result of doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Are there any other questions, councillor?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Again, question to Mr. Burgess, just following up on the last two councillor questions where you've confirmed that there's no additional revenue to council, but there is a cash cost in implementing and processing these changes if they were to be put in place. The consultation paper doesn't actually say that, doesn't tell the community that. And secondly, on the point of completely removing the rates charge on social housing properties, you're indicating that more work needs to be done on the feasibility and, in fact, the legality of that before the consultation paper could be released. Is that both points correct?
Through the Mayor, and again, Councillor Hood, yes, that is correct. Again, there was some late information came through in relation to a 0% rates charge, which we will do need to clarify. And I would certainly strongly recommend to council that we look at that prior to it going out as certainly as a 0%. But having said that, councillors, the intention would be around getting feedback from the community in relation to a reduction in rate.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Any other questions, councillors? In that case, we have an officer's recommendation, which is in the agenda, and it's, I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Bray?
Yes, I'd like to move the motion that we've to put up on the screen, which is option 2.
Alternate motion.
And it's council notes the possible changes to council's differential rating strategy, community engagement paper, which contains the following 4 possible changes to the differential rating strategy. Is it possible to
Wait until we get it on the screen.
up?
Yep. Here it is.
Coming up now.
Okay.
Yep. That A, the new differential rate for residential properties that are used for short-term accommodation be set at 150% of the general differential rate. B, that a new differential rate for non-government residential properties that are used wholly for the provision of social housing be set at 0 of the general differential rate. C, that a new differential rate for certified farming properties be set at 50% of the general differential rate. D, that a new differential rate for vacant land township be set at 150% of the general differential rate. Point 2, request officers update the community engagement paper to include details of the current rating differential categories and rates applied. and to include a statement of details of the cost to date of the current review, costs to implement the potential rating differential changes, and costs to process the potential differential rating changes on an ongoing basis. Point 3, undertakes a community engagement process on the possible changes to council's differential rating strategy to determine the level of community sentiment for or against each of the 4 proposed changes. And 4, considers a report on the results of the community engagement process on the possible changes to council's differential rating strategy at the June 22 council meeting.
Thank you, councillor Bray. Do I have a seconder for that motion? If there's no seconder for that motion, the motion does lapse. And I'm seeking for a motion. Thank you, councillor Henderson.
Mr Mayor, I move that council, 1, acknowledges the work undertaken by officers and councillors to review the potential changes to rating differentials. 2, resolve to make no changes to current rating differentials. And 3, request that officers explore additional options to encourage investment in social housing and to present a report to a future ordinary meeting of council.
Just waiting for it to come up on the screen. I believe that's the motion. So do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillors had a chance to have a look at it. Councillor Hood. All right. Councillor Henderson would like to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I think it probably nearly every council that has ever been elected tries to make things better or more equitable or fair. And over the period of time, it really has had no effect in changing people's behaviour. I think we need to find better ways to do that. And I think the rating is a blunt instrument. We should find ways, of course, to help our farmers. We should find, and we have been doing, we've set up artisan agriculture offices, we've done all that. In the area, you might think perhaps that we've done nothing in the area of social housing. But let me assure you that over the last few years, I think we have 19 of those such houses in the Shire, and most of them have been given over by the Shire to a housing manager to manage those properties. And we don't get any revenue from those. We could have perhaps sold them off, and we would have been probably, by my estimation, at least $5 to $7 million ahead. We've chosen not to do that. And we had properties in Dalesford, quite a number of properties in Dalesford and in Clunes, including 4 we've just recently built over there. So our contribution for a small rural shire to the social housing effort has been huge. And I say, and it'd be a conservative estimate, $5 to $7 million. We need to do more. I think we do need to encourage those people who are managing their land, and that won't just be people who've got certified land, it'll be people who are sustaining their land and looking after their land in different ways. I think, like I said, it's too blunt an instrument. We do say that the housing that's being used for short-term accommodation, along with that comes overnight stays. It brings business into our area. It's a business. It's a living for people. There are some B&B owners or short-term accommodation owners who do make a fortune, but they're very few and far between. Most of them are mum and dad businesses or single people. Maybe they've put their superannuation into that investment. Who are we to say it's not a legitimate business and why should we slug them? And I guess I think they're contributing at 116%. They are a business like any other business. And I think that it's too blunt an instrument, changing the differentials. There's not too much complaint about everyone complains about paying rates, including me, Mr Mayor, but I think they've served us well. These differentials have served us well over the years, and we've got other, better, more pressing things to do than to tinker around with this. Thank you.
Thanks, councillor Henderson. Councillor Hood.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I support this motion. Councillors, I do not regret that we did the research on exploring these 4 options, or in fact the 7 originally. I think it was a prudent thing to do, so I don't regret that. However, as has come out in questioning tonight and through our own studies, there is little or no evidence to support that changing this pricing signal will in fact change the behaviour that we're seeking. I am particularly supportive of ventures related to social housing, however, and that's why I agree with the third point here, where given that we've heard tonight that it may not even be legally possible to implement a 0 differential for social housing properties, we couldn't possibly go to the community suggesting that that was even a possibility. We don't even know that's the case. But I do support that we should explore options which would encourage investment in much needed social housing across the Shire. So I commend this motion as it stands.
Thanks, councillor Hood. Do I have any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Yes. Thanks, councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I support the motion because, and I do acknowledge the work that officers have done, and I do think that that's helped us to understand it. But like Councillor Henderson and Councillor Hood, I think that rating differentials are a blunt instrument to change behaviour. As far as I understand it, there's no evidence that it actually does lead to behavioural change. I understand that that there's concern about affordable housing, but I also acknowledge Councillor Henderson's point that people who have short-term accommodation are contributing to the visitor economy, which is a significant driver for significant economic driver in this region, in this Shire. And again, I acknowledge Councillor Henderson's point that, again, the blunt instrument with farming, looking at just whether farmers are certified or not, when most farmers, if they're going to continue to have longevity and have an economic sustainability, will need to address their farming practices to ensure that, like Councillor Hood and Councillor Henderson, I'm supportive of considering how we might encourage social housing. And I take Councillor Henderson's point that over the years we already have made considerable investment in this area, which perhaps is not widely understood in the community. So I would support the motion.
Thank you, councillor Hewitt. Other councillors speak to the motion?
I'd like to speak against the motion.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Bray.
Yeah, I'd like to speak against the motion. The intention of this project, which has taken several months, it's taken quite a bit of officer time, and we've heard tonight, was to give the community the opportunity to make comment on 4 possible changes to the rating system. And this motion tonight takes away the opportunity for the community to have their say. Instead, council will make a decision tonight. I think we need to hear from the community about how they feel, about how it will impact on them, hear the pros and cons, and when we've heard from the community, then make a final decision. Now, the reason we've investigated all these possible changes is not to raise revenue, as it will have absolutely no impact on council's rates of income, but however, it can have an impact on how we can guide the behaviour of development and land use in this Shire, especially in relation to affordable housing and sustainability. Council has very few levers that we can operate in these areas, and the rates is just one small part, but it is possibly one of the only things we can actually control. While there's ongoing management costs to implement these changes, it's the social and environmental benefits that need to be factored into the gain for our community, especially considering the housing crisis that we find ourselves in and the perilous situation that we're in with regard to the impacts of climate change. For example, if we look at affordable housing, making a small change to the rates for short-term accommodation might help to promote property investors to look towards a long-term accommodation. It sends the signals of owners of short-term accommodation that council would prefer them to move into the long-term rental accommodation market. And it demonstrates to our community that council has heard and acted on their concerns about the high number of residential properties currently being used for short-term accommodation businesses. And that's just one of the proposed changes. But personally, I would like to hear what all members of the community feel about this and how they believe it will impact them. And I want to hear from short-term accommodation businesses, as well as those seeking affordable housing. So I am against the motion, as I really feel that it's a lost opportunity for our community to have a say on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. I do need to interrupt and just extend an option to extend the council meeting past 8:30. So I do need to seek a motion to extend it, as be aware that Chapter 2, Division 2, Clause 16 stipulates that council meeting must not continue after 3 hours unless the majority of councillors present a vote in favour of continuing. I propose that due to a large amount of business to be transacted outlined in tonight's agenda, that council extend the meeting for an additional 3 hours. We'll come back to the motion in a moment. The motion is that council approve to extend the duration of the ordinary council meeting for April 22 for up to additional 3 hours as per council's governance rules. Do I have a mover? Thank you for that. And Councillor Bray, all those in favour? And it's carried.
Well, my question would be, does it have to be for 3 hours?
Don't think you got in there.
What's my question to?
Oh, sorry, I should have asked, didn't
I
I?
had a question, do we have to move it for 3 hours? Don't want to encourage us to use
linger.
the time. Yeah.
I think I did say up to.
No, you didn't, you said for 3.
Okay, back.
You said for an additional 3
I
hours.
think I might have added.
I heard up to.
I'm assuming we're not going to be here for another 3 hours, Councillor.
Well, we don't get on with it, just a minute.
All right, so back to our previous motion, which we just heard from Councillor Bray speaking against the motion. Do I have anyone else who would like to speak against the motion at this point? And right of reply. Okay. Councillors, I'd like to we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, would you please raise your hand? All those against? And that's carried.
Can I call a division?
Yes. We'll redo the vote and we'll take count this time. And all those in favour of the motion, that's Councillor Simpson, Councillor Hood, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Hewitt in favour. All those against, Councillor Bray and Councillor Dryly. And that's the motion is carried. We're now moving on to item 14.2, which is the credit card facility limit increase. I'll introduce this report. The report is to request council to authorise the CEO to sign documentation to increase council's credit facility limit from $50,000 to $150,000. The current limit does not allow requests for new cards or limit increases to be actioned. This authority is required as the credit card facility must be treated as borrowings for the purposes of the Local Government Act 2020 and requires a council resolution. Card and transactions limits by position have recently been reviewed and updated in the credit card policy approved on the 21st of September 2021. Councillors, do I have any questions for the report?
Yes, Mr. Burgess, I'm assuming that this $150,000 not for any one credit card, it's to be divided among the number of staff who have authorised councillor credit cards. And do you know off the top of your head how many staff that would be?
Through Mayor, Councillor Hewitt, I can answer the first question without an issue, and that is absolutely it is not a 150,000 limit on any one credit card. There are delegations of authority and spending limitations that we have put in place for the organisation that was recently adopted by council. So it's within that structure that this would occur. And I'm just getting, thank you. Bruce, currently council has 28 cards issued against the facility.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Anyone else like to speak? Have a question? No? I have a recommendation before me, and that is that council authorise the CEO to sign documentation to increase the credit card facility limit to $150,000. I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover?
Sorry, did you just read out change to the recommendation?
You didn't read. That's not added in.
I've got it added in.
Oh, no, it's not on the agenda.
Okay. I'll read the motion again because this has been added by mistake. So the motion as it stands is that the recommendation is that the council authorises CEO to sign documentation to increase the credit card facility limit. And I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Bray?
I move the officer's recommendation with a slight amendment that council authorise the CEO to sign documentation to increase the credit card facility limit to $150,000.
So if we're going to vote on the amendment, we can only vote on.
No, this is my motion. It's the officer's recommendation.
Okay, so it's an alternative.
With a slight change.
It's an alternative.
No, it's my motion.
It's a motion.
Okay, it's a motion.
Not
Thank
the
you.
recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. So the council authorises the CEO to sign documentation to increase the credit card facility limit to $150,000. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Would anyone like to speak to it?
The purpose of this motion is to increase the efficiency of the organisation, and it is well within the delegation of the officers to manage this facility.
Okay.
No, that's fine.
All right. Anyone else like to speak? Thank you. And we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's carried unanimously. So we're moving to item 14.3, which is instruments of appointments to authorise officers under the Planning and Environment Act. And thank you, Mr. Burgess, for introducing this report.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, this report is largely an administrative report. It relates to instruments of appointment and to authorise officers under the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Councillors, I'll just bring your attention to instruments of appointment and authorisation are prepared based on advice from Maddocks, our legal advisors under their authorisations and delegation service, which we subscribe to, whilst the appointment and authorisation of authorised officers under other relevant legislation is executed by the Chief Executive Officer under delegation. Maddocks recommend that officers enforcing the Planning and Environment Act 1987 be authorised by council resolution. No changes are proposed to the scope of officer powers from previous authorisation. The instrument is simply being updated to reflect new officer appointments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Do we have any questions, Mr. Burgess?
Thanks. Just one question. perhaps know the answer. Mr. Burgess, with the planning department, we've no doubt from time to time employ contractors, and I take it this does not include authorising contractors to issue permits. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair. That is correct, Councillor. And it only includes staff appointed directly as council officers, not contractors or third parties.
Thank you, councillor Henderson. Do you have any other questions? No, I have a recommendation before us, which is the agenda. I'm seeking a motion.
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation as written in the agenda.
Thank you, councillor Hewitt, and seconding that. Thank you, councillor Henderson. Any speakers for that? Or
just that I accept it's an administrative motion that will make and recognise changing staff.
Thanks, councillor Henderson. Thanks, councillor Hewitt. Anyone else like to speak? No. On that basis, we'll take the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously. Item number 14.4 is the revision of instruments of delegation from council to CEO S5 and council to council staff S6. Thanks, Mr. Burgess, again to introduce this.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is largely an administrative report for councillors. The revised instruments reflect staffing changes in the organisation along with legislative changes and amendments suggested by Maddocks as part of their continual review process. There are no changes proposed to the powers of the CEO. From council, the instrument has simply been presented to keep consistency with other instruments. The legislative changes to the S6 instrument of delegation to staff are minimal. There are minor additions to the Food Act 1984 and the removal of a requirement under the Residential Tenancies Act 1997 relating to room houses. These have been placed under CEO delegation and now appear in the instrument of subdelegation by the CEO, section 7, and that has been on the advice from Maddocks. I will note, councillors, that there is a power for the assistant building surveyor in the S6 that the change has been made that allows the assistant building surveyor to sign off in the event of building surveyors having an extended absence and only applies to report and consent provisions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Do we have any questions? No questions. We have a recommendation before us. It's in the agenda. I have a mover. Councillor Henderson, seconder. Councillor Hood. Any speakers? No. Thank you. We'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously. The next item is 15.1, which is the closure of meeting to members of the public. Councillors, I acknowledge that there are two confidential matters the council will need to consider tonight, outlined in the confidential ordinary council meeting agenda for 15th of March 2022. Councillors, I'm seeking a motion to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 662A of the Local Government Act 2020. Please note that should a motion be carried to move the meeting into confidential, then the gallery will be closed. The meeting will cease to be live streamed, and this meeting from this point on will not be available for the community to view and or record. The recommendation and the recommendations before us in the agenda tonight. So, councillors, I'm now seeking a mover and a seconder to move the motion to close the meeting to the public. Do I have a mover? Councillor Simpson. And your recommendation?
Can I just propose a motion to close the meeting?
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion as the recommendation? Thanks, Councillor Hood. Speaking to that, Councillor Simpson, or
No. Councillor Hood, thank you. Anyone else? No. We'll move to the vote. Thanks. All those in favour? All those, and that's carried unanimously. We'll close the meeting.